Abyss stands before her dark castle, her presence commanding and absolute. A skeletal subordinate questions if she needs assistance in dealing with the child hero, but she dismisses the concern with cold confidence, certain that her own hand is more than enough to handle a mere boy. She gazes out with a stern expression, mentally preparing for the day's task of manipulation. Suddenly, a cheerful voice breaks her concentration as the young trainee runs toward her, calling out to his master with genuine excitement. He beams with pure, unadulterated joy at her arrival, eager to show his progress. The sight of his innocent enthusiasm causes her composure to waver, a faint blush creeping onto her cheeks as she asks how his hero training has been progressing. While the boy remains oblivious, she reminds herself of her true objective, to exploit his ignorance and maintain this master-disciple facade until the perfect moment to strike. She views his admiration as a tactical advantage, a way to keep the potential threat under her thumb while appearing as a mentor in his eyes. The boy proudly displays his meager gains, boasting that he managed 16 push-ups today, surpassing his previous record by a single repetition. He strikes a pose, asking if she notices any significant change in his physique or aura. He extends his arm toward her, inviting her to feel the muscle he believes he has built through his rigorous efforts. His confidence is as immense as his actual physical strength is lacking, yet he remains undeterred. She tentatively reaches out, her gloved fingers sinking into his soft arm. Despite his lack of definition, she finds herself surprised by a hidden resilience, realizing that while he is small, he is not entirely without potential. He looks up at her with wide, hopeful eyes, seeking validation for his hard work. Overwhelmed by his earnestness, she stammers out a small compliment, admitting that he might have gotten a little stronger, which sends him into a fit of happy giggles. Emboldened by her praise, he declares with a triumphant shout that he is now ready to defeat the Demon King. The irony of his statement leaves both her and her hidden skeletal observer in a state of stunned, sweating disbelief at his sheer audacity. He then proposes an arm wrestling match to truly test his power against hers, wondering aloud who is truly stronger. She can only watch him in silence, grateful that his simple-mindedness prevents him from seeing the truth of her identity. He strains with every fiber of his being, face contorted and cheeks puffed, as he tries to budge his master's hand. Across from him, she watches with a calm, almost predatory smirk, seeing this as the perfect opportunity to assert her dominance. With a sharp signal, the contest begins. Despite the physical struggle, a different kind of tension fills the air as she finds herself flustered by the boy's proximity and earnest effort. Her face flushes, and a bead of sweat rolls down her cheek, while he continues to push with desperate, trembling strength. Realizing the awkwardness of the moment, she abruptly ends the match, admitting that she had been holding back. The sudden release of pressure leaves a heavy silence between them. The defeat is too much for the young trainee, and he begins to tremble, tears welling in his eyes. She tries to offer a clumsy consolation, telling him to calm down and promising that he will grow stronger as he reaches adulthood, but her words do little to stem his rising tide of emotion. He breaks down completely, sobbing about his perceived weakness and his fear that he will never be able to save the world. Watching his genuine despair, her expression softens into one of deep, unexpected empathy. In a rare moment of tenderness, she pulls the weeping boy into a firm embrace, resting his head against her. She tells him that his willingness to face even a demon king on equal terms is a sign of true strength, urging him to dry his tears. Muffled against her, he can only manage a weak, grateful whisper of her title. The world seems to stand still as he finds comfort in the arms of the very enemy he is destined to fight. Looking up with red, watery eyes, he asks if she will return to train him again the following day. She meets his gaze with a genuine, warm smile, assuring him that she will certainly be there. Later, back within the cold stone walls of her own domain, she collapses in exhaustion, the weight of her deception taking a visible toll. She realizes that maintaining this fake smile and the charade of a mentor is becoming an agony all its own. General Leon and his elite troops observe from a distance, their eyes fixed on the horizon. They speak in hushed, respectful tones about the hero's growing reputation, but their ultimate faith lies with their master, whose power they deem unstoppable. Leon sternly commands his subordinates to remain in the shadows, insisting that they must not interfere with the events unfolding. She is lost in her own thoughts, her gaze sharp and focused as she contemplates her next move against the boy. Her nearby subordinates are struck by the intensity of her expression, misinterpreting her internal conflict as a terrifying and majestic display of her dark authority. In the heart of a sunny forest, Yu runs toward his mentor with boundless energy, his face lighting up with a wide, joyful grin. He calls out to her, his voice filled with excitement as he eagerly asks if she will continue his fencing lessons today. She seems momentarily caught off guard by his sudden appearance and infectious enthusiasm. When the boy notices her hesitation and asks if something is wrong, she quickly adjusts her posture and masks her surprise, coolly dismissing his concern as if nothing had happened. Her internal strategy remains cold and calculated. By posing as his master, she intends to wait for the perfect moment of vulnerability to strike him down. Meanwhile, the young student focuses entirely on the task at hand, preparing to swing his wooden blade at a heavy log suspended from a tree branch. She steps closer to provide hands-on instruction, guiding his movements and telling him to drive more power from his hips to improve his strike. While she offers technical advice, she silently critiques his lack of resolve, believing that his indecisiveness will be his downfall. Following her guidance, he executes a powerful swing that connects perfectly with the target. The impact echoes through the clearing, and he shouts with triumph, his eyes sparkling with the thrill of finally landing a successful hit. The victory is short-lived as the heavy log swings back with unexpected force, striking him squarely on the head and sending him tumbling to the ground. Seeing him fall, she immediately drops her cold facade, rushing toward him with a look of genuine panic and asking if he is badly hurt. Realizing her lapse in character, she frantically tries to regain her composure, her face flushing with embarrassment. She scolds herself for showing such concern, desperately reminding herself that she is the Demon King and must never let her subordinates witness such a display of weakness. A simple slime wobbles into the clearing, its mindless presence offering her a strange sense of relief. She concludes that because such creatures lack intelligence, her true nature and her momentary loss of control will remain a secret, hidden from the rest of the world. She watches as the young boy insists on handling the creature himself, declaring his role as the hero. With a determined shout, he lunges forward, but his strike is clumsy, and the gelatinous foe simply absorbs the impact. Because of his reckless charge, he finds himself pinned beneath the translucent mass of the slime. She observes silently, noting that this level of challenge should suffice, especially since her position forbids her from harming her own underlings. Meanwhile, the boy struggles, his face pressed into the dirt as he laments his pathetic defeat. A sharp cry of distress rings out as the boy continues to flounder. Her composure begins to crack, a bead of sweat rolling down her cheek as her maternal concern wars with her cold facade. Moments later, he lies panting on the grass, his wooden sword cast aside. She stands over him, her shadow looming as the tension in the air thickens. As he continues to struggle against the sticky creature, she finally snaps, shouting for him to cease his futile efforts. She berates him, questioning how he expects to reach greater heights if he cannot even overcome a simple slime, her voice laced with a desperate need for him to stay safe. In response to her harsh words, he pushes himself up, his eyes burning with a new resolve. He declares that as a hero, it is his duty to protect his comrades regardless of the danger, a sentiment that causes her heart to flutter and a faint blush to creep onto her face. Suddenly, a terrifying presence erupts from behind the boy, a manifestation of her overwhelming power that dwarfs the small creature. The slime, sensing the true nature of the being before it, trembles in absolute terror. The creature flees in a panic, leaving the boy confused. She quickly composes herself, stammering an excuse about how acting unfairly toward her subordinates would reflect poorly on her status as the Demon King, masking her protective intervention with bureaucratic logic. Seeing the threat gone, he breaks down into tears of pure relief. She rushes to his side, her voice softening as she frantically checks him for injuries, her facade completely forgotten in the wake of his distress. Finally, she pulls him into a gentle embrace, shielding him with her cloak. She whispers a quiet acknowledgement, noting that while he may be small and physically weak, his spirit possesses a strength that far exceeds his stature. She remains locked in a cycle of internal conflict, a torment that only deepens as her subordinates bring word of the world beyond her castle walls. One skeletal messenger delivers a report that strikes her with pure disbelief. Rumors claim the young hero is traveling with a formidable warrior woman. The news is so absurd to her that she can barely contain her shock, demanding to know if the report is serious, while her larger, silent guards look on at her visible distress. High atop the craggy peaks, the dark spires of the Demon King's castle pierce the stormy sky. Inside the throne room, whispers circulate among the court about the young hero who has proven to be a formidable adversary, and how their sovereign, Abyss, is meeting this threat with unwavering resolve. Among the ranks, a muscular demon and a skeletal soldier fret over the possibility of defeat, their own futures uncertain if the hero prevails. Sensing the growing unease, she realizes she must take decisive action to maintain her authority and quell the doubts of her subjects, even as she internally grapples with her own anxieties. Nearby, a hooded subordinate dares to call out General Leon for his blatant lack of respect toward the throne. The massive lion man merely scoffs, his sheer physical presence dwarfing the messenger as he maintains that he is simply speaking the truth about the current state of their leadership. He goes further, declaring his long-standing opposition to her rule and boasting that with his overwhelming strength, even the hero would be forced to submit. He views her as a shadow of her predecessors, unworthy of the title she holds and the power it represents. The general's insults turn into a direct challenge as he labels her a disappointment and claims he can already envision her downfall. In response, she remains composed, coolly asking if he is prepared to back up his bold words with steel. Seeing her stand her ground, the surrounding demons erupt in cheers, their loyalty shifting back as they mock the general for his sudden hesitation. They boast that with their queen leading them, the hero is no longer a threat to be feared. Under the weight of her commanding presence, the once boastful general is forced into a submissive kneel. The halls echo with the thunderous acclaim of the demonic horde, celebrating the perceived strength of their ruler as she asserts her dominance. She reflects on the heavy burden of her lineage, knowing that to her people, the Demon King is a protective calamity against the hero's light. With a renewed sense of purpose, she prepares to demonstrate the true, terrifying power that her title commands to the world. However, this dark resolve is immediately tested when the young hero himself appears, holding out a steaming bowl of food with a bright, innocent smile. He warmly invites his master to join him for a meal, completely oblivious to the political turmoil that just unfolded in the court. The fearsome facade crumbles instantly as she becomes flustered, her face flushing with deep embarrassment. Forgetting her grand declarations of terror, she eagerly accepts the invitation, her terrifying nature replaced by a simple, hungry enthusiasm. She finds herself struggling to maintain her composure as the young boy looks up at her with such earnestness. He explains that he prepared the meal specifically for her, noticing her apparent fatigue. The gesture strikes a chord deep within her, making her feel unworthy of such kindness, while simultaneously finding his innocent concern incredibly endearing. Stealing her resolve, she tries to push back the rising tide of affection. She reminds herself of her status and the weight of her title, commanding her own heart not to waver or succumb to the boy's simple charm. With a renewed sense of duty, she stands tall, her gaze hardening. She declares to the empty air that as the sovereign of demons, she cannot permit any weakness. For the sake of her position and the loyal subjects who look up to her, she vows that she will not be defeated by these strange, soft emotions. However, her grand declaration is immediately met with the boy's tearful, pleading eyes. He asks if she is hungry, confessing that his only wish is to see her smile again. The sheer sincerity of his request shatters her defenses in an instant, and she finds herself shouting her hunger to the heavens, her resolve completely evaporated. Moments later, she is devouring the meal with uncharacteristic gusto, her cheeks bulging as she eats. The boy watches with a bright, relieved smile, encouraging her to eat her fill. As she tastes the food, she is struck by a profound realization, wondering if this overwhelming kindness is the true, terrifying power of the hero. Exhausted by the feast, she eventually slumps against a wall, clutching her stomach in a state of overstuffed lethargy. Her subordinates rush to her side, their faces etched with concern as they mistake her condition for the aftermath of a titanic struggle. She remains silent, unable to bring herself to admit that her current defeat was caused by nothing more than a very large dinner. While she remains incapacitated by her own appetite, the lion-headed general watches from the shadows. He misinterprets her lethargy as the result of a brutal struggle, seeing it as the perfect opening he has been waiting for. With a predatory grin, he resolves to eliminate the exhausted hero himself and finally seize the throne of the Demon King. The massive lion man looms over the small boy, pinning him into the dirt with a heavy paw. He growls in confusion, wondering why his queen would ever warn him about such a pathetic opponent, or if perhaps his own strength has simply grown too great. He stands triumphant over the broken child, unaware that his queen is watching the execution from a nearby cliff. She had intended to end the hero's life herself, but she realizes now that his fate is sealed. She remains silent as the general delivers a series of punishing blows, each one intended to crush the boy's spirit along with his bones. The sheer violence of the assault leaves the small figure gasping for air. His fingers claw at the dirt, blood staining the earth as he fights to stay conscious. Despite the overwhelming pain, he tells himself that he must endure, for he cannot afford to abandon his post now. He manages to gasp out a defiant claim to his title, but the beast only laughs, telling him that such is the harsh reality of life, and that weakness only breeds resentment. The child stares up in terror as the monster leans closer, his voice a low growl as he promises that the boy's death is only the beginning, and that his friend will be the next to fall. The beast continues to mock the boy's connections, stating that even a warrior of her caliber cannot escape the fate he has planned for them both. The general is caught off guard as she suddenly moves with blinding speed, her blade intercepting his strike just inches from the boy's face. The boy erupts in a desperate, soul-searing scream, commanding the beast to stay away from those he holds dear as a blinding light begins to emanate from his body. The resulting blast of energy carves a massive crater into the landscape, throwing the combatants apart and leaving the air thick with the scent of ozone and upturned earth. He has left a trail of destruction in his wake. General Leon lies broken in the dust, his massive form finally stilled by the overwhelming surge of energy. Seeing their leader fallen, the lesser demons scramble away in a frantic panic, their terrified cries echoing through the wasteland as they warn each other that the young hero is far more dangerous than they ever imagined. Standing over the boy's limp form, Abyss gazes down with a cold, calculating intensity. She admits to herself that she hadn't anticipated he possessed such overwhelming power, a force that now clearly marks him as a lethal threat to the entire demon race. With a grim resolve, she concludes that she must eliminate the danger here and now, her hand reaching for the hilt of her blade as she prepares to strike. As she draws her steel, a faint, rhythmic mumbling stops her cold. The boy stirs in his unconscious state, a small, innocent smile playing on his lips as he whispers a plea for praise, proud of having succeeded on his own. The sheer vulnerability of his dream-filled sleep creates a jarring contrast with the lethal weapon hovering just inches away, causing her to hesitate. Her expression softens, the murderous intent in her eyes replaced by a complex mix of exasperation and a strange, burgeoning affection. The harsh lines of the Demon King's resolve begin to waver as she looks upon the child who, just moments ago, was a source of pure, unbridled destruction. Under the silent watch of the full moon, her voice carries a hint of playful annoyance as she calls him a cheater. The vast, rocky landscape seems to hold its breath. The immediate threat of death has passed, replaced by a quiet, nocturnal peace that settles over the battlefield. Sometime later, the boy finds himself tucked safely away within the shelter of a cave, resting on a makeshift bed. Beside him, 2 fresh apples have been left as a silent offering, while he continues to sleep soundly, completely oblivious to how close he came to his end. Outside the cavern's mouth, she stands tall, her face now hidden behind a decorative mask. With her dignity as the Demon King restored, She issues a stern warning to the sleeping hero, declaring that his defiance will not go unpunished and that he must prepare himself for the trial she has in store for him. High above the forest floor, Abyss and General Leon observe their target from the safety of the cliffs. They discuss the looming threat of the hero's hidden power, a force that could jeopardize the entire demon realm if left unchecked. Despite the danger, Abyss decides to remain patient, suggesting that the boy might still be recovering from the previous day's exertion. He stands alone in a clearing, suddenly pointing his wooden sword at the empty air and shouting for the Demon King to stop. Tucked behind a nearby tree, Abyss flinches in shock, terrified that her presence has been discovered, only to realize the boy is merely role-playing a confrontation with an imaginary villain. He begins swinging his blade wildly, grunting with effort as he strikes at the wind. Watching from the shadows, Abyss is gripped by a sudden chill, wondering if this erratic display is actually a manifestation of the terrifying power Leon warned her about. He then breaks into a frantic run, circling the clearing with wide eyes while making strange noises. The tension Abyss felt moments ago evaporates into pure confusion as she and her subordinate watch the boy's bizarre behavior with utter bewilderment. He spins around and gestures toward the trees, heroically commanding someone to hide behind him for safety. Abyss realizes he is now incorporating her into his fantasy, treating her as a helpless bystander in need of protection. He continues his game by lining up small dolls that resemble Abyss's own subordinates, declaring that he is practicing for the day the village is truly attacked. Abyss watches the pathetic display with a bead of sweat on her brow, finding the sight of her elite forces being used as toys to be deeply regrettable. Abyss finally steps out from her hiding spot to ask what on earth he is doing. Yu beams at her, explaining that he practices every day by visualizing exactly how a hero should act, leaving her with a lingering sense of profound discomfort at his earnestness. She reminds him of the dream he mentioned yesterday, where he fought a monstrous lion, but Yu admits he is struggling to visualize the opponent correctly. Unbeknownst to him, the very lion man from his dreams, General Leon, is standing silently in the brush just a few feet away. Yu suddenly looks up at her with sparkling, hopeful eyes, calling her master and pleading for her help. He asks if she would be willing to play the part of the Demon King so that his training can feel more realistic. Abyss sees a golden opportunity in his request, realizing she can use this performance as a cover to strike him down for real. She strikes a menacing, dramatic pose, declaring herself the Demon King and vowing to defeat him without mercy, while Yu cheers, completely unaware of the lethal intent behind her words. She finds the roleplay incredibly embarrassing, her face flushing a deep crimson as she avoids his gaze. The boy simply stands there, watching her struggle with the performance. Seeing his tear-filled eyes and trembling lip, she panics, offering a clumsy apology and promising to take the battle more seriously next time. Internally, she justifies this softness as a necessary deception to keep him off guard. Stealing her resolve, she erupts into a terrifying display of power, her voice booming as she declares that the hero's journey ends here. She looms over him, the very air around her thick with the menace of a true monarch of darkness. The dramatic proclamation hangs in the air as she maintains her imposing stance, a towering figure of shadow against the vast, empty horizon where the small boy stands. When the silence stretches on too long, her confidence wavers, and she demands some kind of reaction to her performance, her face once again heating up from the awkwardness of the moment. His eyes suddenly ignite with pure wonder, his face lighting up as he praises her for how authentic she looks. She can't help but feel a flicker of pride, reminding herself that she isn't just acting. She is the genuine article. Inspired by her display, he raises his wooden blade and boldly declares his refusal to submit to her dark reign. She beckons him forward, urging him to strike with everything he has while she secretly waits for the perfect moment to deliver a fatal blow. Instead of a fierce warrior's snarl, a radiant, joyful laugh breaks across his face, his innocence shining through with a warmth that catches her completely off guard. The sheer purity of his smile hits her like a physical blow, causing her to recoil in a mix of agony and confusion as her heart races. She clutches at herself, overwhelmed by a sensation she cannot name. Unable to maintain the facade any longer, she beats a hasty retreat, shouting over her shoulder that she will spare his life just for today. He watches, confused, as the terrifying Demon King flees the field of battle. She retreats into the distance, her silhouette shrinking against the sky as she flees the scene of her latest failure. Below, the young hero waves enthusiastically, calling out a cheerful farewell that echoes through the trees, completely oblivious to the internal turmoil he has caused. Having returned to the safety of her own domain, she collapses into a crouch, her head buried in her hands as she is consumed by a wave of self-loathing. She questions her own motives for even approaching the boy, lamenting the fact that she has once again failed to strike him down. In the background, her loyal subordinates watch in silent confusion, unable to comprehend their master's sudden descent into despair. Ancient scrolls speak of a celestial arrival, a child descending from the heavens with a singular, heavy purpose, to vanquish the Demon King and fulfill a destiny written in the stars. This destiny manifested in the simplest of acts when a young boy found a weeping girl lost within the woods. With a gentle smile and an outstretched hand, he offered her safety, embodying the very essence of the savior the legends foretold. Word of his deeds spread quickly, and soon a crowd gathered at the edge of the village. While some hailed him as a savior, others looked on with a mixture of awe and uncertainty as the news of the rescue in the forest was shared among the neighbors. The girl's mother stepped forward, her voice thick with gratitude as she urged her daughter to thank their benefactor. However, the girl's father remained cold, dismissing the need for such formalities, while the young hero himself tried to downplay his involvement, feeling out of place amidst the attention. As he stood there, the air grew heavy with the hushed murmurs of the onlookers. They spoke in fearful tones of rumors that he could transform into a terrifying beast when provoked, their eyes betraying a deep-seated dread of the power contained within such a small frame. He lowered his head, the weight of their suspicion pressing down on him more heavily than any physical burden. The silence between the villagers and their supposed protector became a chasm, filled only with the shadows of their collective fear. Finally, the village elder spoke, his words a painful blend of gratitude and rejection. He thanked the boy for his service, but explained that the fear he inspired had become too much for the people to bear, gently suggesting that his presence was no longer welcome within their borders. He met the request with a forced, cheerful grin, assuring them that he understood and would return only if they truly needed him. With a final wave, he turned his back on the village, walking away into the distance as the sun began to set on his brief time among them. He is startled as a familiar, commanding voice cuts through the silence of his exile. Abyss stands before him, her imposing figure framed against the sky, revealing that she has been watching his every move. As she questions his lack of resentment, he calmly explains the burden he has chosen to carry. To him, a true hero does not seek rewards or harbor anger toward those he protects, even when they offer no gratitude in return. This selfless philosophy clearly irritates her, causing her to grit her teeth in frustration. She dismisses his logic as utter nonsense, her patience wearing thin at his unwavering idealism. Losing her composure, she lunges forward and seizes him, her voice rising to a shout. She demands to know why he clings so desperately to the title of hero when the world has treated him with such blatant injustice. Looking away from her piercing gaze, he speaks softly of a commitment that anchors his soul. It is not about the villagers or the title, but a promise he made long ago. His mind drifts back to a quiet moment by a simple grave, where he knelt before his deceased grandfather. There, amidst the swaying grass, he had vowed to become a brave and noble protector. To honor that memory, he believes he must remain both strong and kind, regardless of the hardships he faces. Abyss watches him, her previous anger replaced by a silent, contemplative stillness. With tears welling in his eyes, he looks up and offers a radiant, heartbreaking smile. He reaffirms his identity, declaring that being a hero is the only path he will ever walk. The sight of his tearful joy leaves her momentarily speechless. She stands frozen, witnessing the raw vulnerability and strength of the boy she had intended to provoke. Reaching out a gloved hand, she gently tells him to stop his weeping. He can no longer hold back the flood of emotion, his small frame shaking as he sobs, still trying to convince himself that a hero must remain stoic. He stands trembling, his small frame racked with sobs as the Demon King looms over him. Instead of the cold malice one might expect, she looks down with a gaze that is softened, her presence offering a strange, silent sanctuary to the grieving boy. Looking up through a veil of tears, the young hero hears her voice, surprisingly gentle as she validates his struggle. She calls him a brave hero, acknowledging the immense effort he has poured into a path that often feels thankless and lonely. He wipes his eyes with his sleeve, his voice cracking as he insists that he must strive even harder, despite the crushing weight of futility that haunts his every step. Her clawed hand rests firmly on his shoulder, a grounding weight amidst his emotional turmoil. She pulls him closer, her voice a low murmur as she advises him to let the tears flow while he still can. She warns him that once he truly becomes strong, the luxury of crying will be lost to him, urging him to embrace this moment of vulnerability. Enveloping him in a protective embrace, the Demon King provides the comfort the boy so desperately needs, her fur mantle shielding him from the world. However, this tender moment does not go unobserved. From a distance, the massive silhouette of General Leon watches, a dark grin spreading across his face as he notes this unexpected turn of events. The Demon King stands resolute, her mind fixed on the young hero. She knows she must act quickly, before the boy's latent power fully manifests and changes the balance of their world forever. Searching the outskirts of the woods, she finds only an empty clearing. The boy is nowhere to be seen, heightening her growing sense of urgency as she scans the silent trees. She eventually tracks him to a nearby cave, calling his name into the darkness. Her heart sinks as she steps inside and finds the small figure she was looking for. There, the young boy lies shivering in a makeshift bed, his face pale and slick with sweat. He is clearly in the throes of a deep, agonizing fever, his breathing shallow and labored. Examining him closely, she realizes the grim truth. The scratch from General Leon's claw has festered. It is the work of evil toxin, a lethal demonic poison found in the fangs and claws of her kind that ravages a human body from within. She observes that the poison has taken an unusually long time to manifest, likely slowed by the boy's own inherent hero strength, but the corruption has finally taken a firm hold of his vitals. A sharp, calculating smile crosses her lips as a realization dawns on her. This dire situation has presented her with a unique and unexpected opportunity to influence the boy's fate. She knows that no human medicine can purge such a dark corruption. The poison of demons is an absolute sentence for mortals. If she leaves him now, his life will surely be extinguished by the very darkness she commands. She stands over the suffering boy, declaring that this is his end. Yu's face is contorted in agony, sweat beading on his forehead as the poison takes hold. As he gasps and chokes on his own breath, she remains resolute, repeating her vow to witness his final moments. However, a flicker of hesitation crosses her features, her gaze softening as she watches his struggle. When a piercing scream of pain erupts from the boy, she recoils in genuine shock, her composure shattering as she sees him thrashing. The sight triggers a painful memory of a similar scene long ago, where she sat powerless by the bedside of her predecessor, apologizing for her lack of strength. She tries to shake off the feeling, telling herself not to dwell on such things, yet the parallels to that day are undeniable. Amidst his suffering, the boy manages to open his eyes slightly, his voice a mere whisper as he calls out to her. She freezes, stunned by the question he manages to croak out, asking if she is crying. Reaching up to her cheek, she is bewildered to find it wet, unable to comprehend why she is shedding tears for a supposed enemy. He reaches out a trembling hand toward her, his gaze fixed on her face as she looks down at him with an expression of profound sorrow. Wiping away the evidence of her grief, she listens as he questions her state, once again addressing her with a title of respect that cuts through her defenses. She stands over the boy, her eyes brimming with tears she cannot hide. Despite his own agony, the young hero tries to offer comfort, stammering that he will recover soon and pleading with her not to weep for him. He continues to struggle, his breath coming in ragged gasps as sweat beads on his forehead. Though he admits the pain is significant, he tries to downplay his suffering, insisting that he is fine despite the obvious toll the poison is taking on his small frame. A weak smile crosses his face as he looks up at her, confessing that her mere presence by his side provides him with a sense of peace. She gazes down at him, her expression a complex mask of sorrow and hesitation as she listens to his heartfelt words. Suddenly, the boy's strength fails him entirely, and he slips into unconsciousness, his head lolling back against the pillow. Panic flares within her as she calls out his name, realizing that his condition has reached a critical breaking point. Driven by a desperate resolve to end his torment, she clenches her fist until the skin breaks, allowing her own potent blood to drip onto him. She whispers a promise to end his suffering, choosing a path of sacrifice over the cold execution she had originally planned. Sometime later, the youth awakens to find the agonizing pain has vanished, replaced by a strange vitality. It is a known truth of this world that the venom of lesser demons is neutralized when countered by the lifeblood of a far more powerful entity, a miracle he now experiences firsthand. While he marvels at his recovery, she retreats into the shadows of the castle corridors, her back turned to the room. She berates herself for her perceived weakness, lamenting that she once again lacked the cold-hearted courage required to take his life, vowing that the next encounter will be different. Far from the hero's sight, the Demon King finally collapses into a fit of loud, emotional wailing, her composure completely shattered. Her loyal subordinates watch from a distance, utterly bewildered by this unprecedented display of raw emotion from their normally stoic and terrifying ruler. The young hero is radiant, proudly displaying a basket of fresh vegetables harvested from his home garden. He warmly invites his companion to share a meal, completely unaware that she is silently brooding over her repeated failures to best him in combat. She ponders his potential vulnerabilities, her frustration eventually boiling over into a sharp demand for him to stop being a coward, though the outburst seems more a reflection of her own desperation to find a single opening. She watches as he suddenly turns pale, staring at the green bell peppers with a look of pure, unadulterated revulsion. He confesses his intense dislike for their pungent smell and bitter taste, a revelation that immediately piques her interest. He recoils in genuine shock as she seizes the moment, pointing a finger dramatically and declaring that such a pathetic attitude towards simple vegetables will ensure his ultimate defeat at the hands of the Demon King. She begins to formulate a devious strategy, reasoning that by forcing him to confront his greatest disgust, she can push him to his absolute mental limit and strike when his spirit is finally broken. He reluctantly takes a small bite, his face contorting in visible agony as he struggles to swallow the offending vegetable. She watches him with a calculating gaze, acknowledging that the path to overcoming one's inner demons is never an easy one. His struggle is evident, and as she observes his pained expression, a strange realization dawns on her, noticing a peculiar gap in his usual stoicism that she might be able to exploit. She watches as he winces at the bitter, raw flavor, nearly letting his guard slip entirely before he manages to catch himself. He realizes he must be far more careful if he wants his hidden agenda to remain a secret. He suddenly turns to her with pleading eyes, begging her to teach him the secret to enjoying the bitter vegetables. She is caught completely off guard by the earnest request, her carefully constructed composure momentarily shattered. The young hero assumes that because of her immense strength, she must surely possess the wisdom to overcome such trivial dislikes. Meanwhile, she stares at the peppers in silent horror, internally screaming as she wonders how she ended up in this ridiculous predicament. She recoiled in a fit of flustered denial, her face flushed with a mix of shame and indignation. The accusation that she had been found out stung, and she loudly insisted that her supposed dislike for the vegetables was a complete fabrication, though her frantic expression suggested otherwise. To prove her point and address the boy's plea, she threw herself into the task of cooking with an intensity that bordered on the theatrical. Beside her, the young hero in training cheered with infectious enthusiasm, eager to assist in the creation of a dish that would supposedly change his mind about the bitter greens. The kitchen became a whirlwind of activity as she meticulously coordinated the ingredients, stuffing the hollowed-out bell peppers with a savory meat filling. Despite the absurdity of a Demon King teaching a hero how to eat his vegetables, she remained focused, eventually presenting a plate of perfectly browned, stuffed peppers that smelled far better than the boy had ever imagined. He took a large, hesitant bite, and his eyes immediately widened with a brilliance that rivaled the stars. The fear that had once gripped him at the sight of the green vegetable vanished instantly, replaced by a shout of pure joy as he declared the meal absolutely delicious, much to her secret relief. Seeing his genuine delight, she tried to maintain her composure, though a deep blush remained fixed on her cheeks. When he questioned if bell peppers could truly taste this good, she dismissed his wonder with a haughty air, claiming that such a result was only natural given her superior culinary skills as his master. They eventually moved their meal to a quiet table outdoors, where the tension of their usual roles seemed to meld away in the afternoon light. As they ate in silence, a rare thought crossed her mind. The simple act of sharing a meal with another person was unexpectedly pleasant. She looked at him with a soft, genuine smile that reached her eyes, a far cry from her usual intimidating persona. When he commented on the peacefulness of the moment, she quietly agreed, acknowledging the warmth that the shared experience had brought to her heart. The boy beamed, proudly announcing that the once terrifying vegetables no longer held any power over him. Encouraged by his progress, she urged him not to hold back and to eat his fill, momentarily forgetting the implications of her success. Suddenly, the weight of her actions hit her like a physical blow, and she let out a cry of pure shock. In her desire to be a good teacher, she realized she had inadvertently helped the hero overcome a major psychological weakness, potentially raising his capabilities to a level that could one day surpass her own. As she stared down at the half-eaten pepper on her own plate, a final, quiet realization dawned on her. In her effort to train the boy, she had also managed to consume the very vegetable she had once despised, proving that even a demon king was not immune to her own lessons. She feels a surge of newfound power coursing through her, matching the boy's exuberant display of strength as they both feast on the bell pepper dish. In this moment of shared triumph, she declares that she, too, has grown significantly stronger through this culinary victory. After the intense sensation of power fades, she turns to him with a flushed face and a triumphant smile, suggesting that their shared conquest of the vegetable has resulted in a draw. He simply looks on, a bit bewildered by her sudden competitive spirit over a simple meal. The day begins with a call to training, but the young boy is preoccupied with a different task. He holds up a piece of paper, explaining to his mentor that it is a letter intended for the comrades who will eventually join him to defeat the Demon King. The woman stands frozen, her expression a mix of shock and irritation at the mention of her own demise. Before she can react, he politely requests that she wait outside, insisting that he has something of great importance to attend to. He scurries into the nearby cave, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Standing in the shadows, she reflects on her true purpose. Hiding her identity as the Demon King to stay close to the hero was a calculated move, specifically intended for a moment like this. The prospect of him gathering allies is a genuine threat to her reign that she cannot ignore. As she watches him from the entrance, the boy settles at a small desk and begins to labor over the parchment. Her resolve hardens. She must find a way to prevent these comrades from ever uniting. Her mind races with dark possibilities as she observes his progress. She wonders if she should simply snatch the letter away or perhaps incinerate it where it lies, ending the threat before it can even be sent. Suddenly, he turns toward her, breaking her train of thought. With an innocent expression, he asks for help with the spelling of a word, revealing that this important task is actually a grueling session of calligraphy practice. A wave of realization washes over her as she watches him struggle. It hadn't occurred to her that he lacked even basic writing skills, yet here he is, attempting to reach out to others without asking for her assistance. She remains in the shadows, her face clouded with a complex mix of emotions. The fact that he is willing to go to such lengths, even struggling with the very act of writing, just to contact these allies, deeply unsettles her. He remains focused, his brow furrowed in concentration as he dips his quill into the ink. He can't help but wonder if these distant comrades are truly worth all this effort. Yet he continues his work with singular determination. Finally, he holds up the completed letter with a triumphant grin, calling out for his master. However, the space where she stood is now empty, as she has retreated further into the darkness to process what she has witnessed. He had left his completed letter resting on the table, a silent testament to his hard work that now drew his master's dark gaze as she contemplated the thread it posed. Driven by this dark logic, she summoned a flicker of destructive energy in her hand, her gaze hardening as she prepared to incinerate the message and ensure no allies would ever come to his aid. However, she couldn't bring herself to strike, her magic flickering out as a wave of hesitation washed over her just as the boy returned to the room, his face bright with concern for her. He noticed her proximity to his work and quickly moved to retrieve the envelope, his small hands trembling with a mix of nerves and excitement. He held the letter out with both hands, looking up at her with wide, pleading eyes as he asked her to be the one to read his words. His radiant smile and hopeful gaze caught her completely off guard, her heart skipping a beat as she realized the letter wasn't meant for some distant army, but was a personal message intended solely for her. As she began to read the clumsy script, the depth of his sincerity became clear. He thanked her for her daily training and expressed an absolute trust, vowing that they would defeat the Demon King together. The words, written with such pure intent, seemed to pierce through her cold exterior. She stammered in surprise, questioning why he hadn't written to his future comrades instead, only for him to reveal that he had kept this a secret because he wanted his very first letter to be for his master. He explained that the idea of writing to anyone else hadn't even crossed his mind. The weight of being his only true companion left her reeling, and she instinctively hid her burning face behind the paper while her small subordinate watched from the shadows, realizing the boy truly had no one else in the world but her. The realization was both terrifying and strangely moving. She was left in a state of total emotional disarray, paralyzed by the irony that the Demon King he so earnestly wanted to defeat was the very person standing before him. The boy, oblivious to her internal crisis, could only tilt his head in confusion at her sudden, intense reaction, wondering if he had said something wrong. She sat alone in the silent throne room of her dark citadel, the weight of the boy's words finally sinking in. As she reread the letter, the cold, imposing facade of the Demon King melted away, replaced by a soft, genuine smile and a deep blush that warmed her cheeks. The earnestness of his trust was overwhelming, stirring feelings she hadn't expected. However, the moment of vulnerability was short-lived. When her subordinates approached, she immediately became flustered, frantically trying to hide her uncharacteristic expression and the precious paper from their prying, confused eyes. The Demon King stands tall in her throne room, but her loyal skeletal servants and the small slime are visibly distressed. They plead with her to take a moment for herself, noting that her predecessor's relentless work ethic was a heavy burden. Though she initially dismisses their concerns as unnecessary, their persistent begging finally wears her down. She agrees to step away from her castle duties, deciding instead that she should spend her time monitoring the young hero's progress. Deep within the sun-dappled forest, the young boy diligently swings his practiced sword, unaware of the eyes upon him. Hidden behind the thick trunk of a tree, the Demon King watches his every move with a calculating gaze. She reminds herself that their current master-disciple bond is merely a tactical maneuver, a way to stay close until the perfect moment to strike presents itself. To her, maintaining the image of a powerful ruler is paramount, and she resolves to defeat him as quickly as possible to solidify her authority. Sensing a presence, he pauses his training and looks toward the trees, his expression one of mild curiosity. She steps out from her hiding place, her face set in a stern, unyielding mask of duty. In her mind, the weight of her title leaves no room for leisure. She believes that every passing second must be dedicated to her ultimate goal. By the following morning, the atmosphere has shifted from training to domestic chores as the boy struggles to hang a large, heavy fabric over a wooden frame to dry in the sun. As he works, the Demon King approaches him, her imposing silhouette contrasting with the mundane task at hand. She watches him for a moment before questioning the purpose of his labor. He looks up, his face brightening with a cheerful grin as he welcomes her arrival, noting that her timing couldn't be better. With an enthusiastic beam, he gestures toward a nearby cave entrance and asks if she would assist him in carrying the freshly aired futon inside. His request is simple and filled with an innocent expectation of help. Moments later, the formidable ruler of the demon realm finds herself tucked beneath the covers alongside the boy, staring blankly at the cave's ceiling in a state of complete shock. While he exclaims with pure joy about how wonderful the sun-dried fabric feels against his skin, she remains frozen, her mind reeling as she tries to comprehend how her plan for world domination led to a shared nap in a cave. She finds herself reclining on the soft fabric of the futon, her mind racing with confusion as to how she ended up in such a vulnerable position. Beside her, the small, gelatinous companion explains its simple desire for its master to find rest, comparing her stubbornness to that of her own subordinates. Despite her internal protests that she must remain vigilant to monitor the young hero, the boy continues his earnest efforts, even bringing flowers to brighten the space. He begins to hum a gentle lullaby, a sound that grates against her pride as she vows not to be swayed by the simple tactics of a child. The situation takes an even more intimate turn when he reaches out, his small hand coming to rest atop her head in a rhythmic, soothing motion. She gasps in surprise, her eyes wide as she questions his sudden boldness. He explains with a soft smile that this was a gesture his grandfather used to perform to help him drift into slumber. As the rhythmic patting continues, a strange sense of nostalgia washes over her, and she finds herself searching her memories for the source of this hauntingly familiar comfort. Her mind drifts back to a desolate era, a landscape of jagged rocks and rising smoke where a lonely, younger version of herself stood weeping amidst the ruins. Out of the shadows of that grim past, a massive, dark silhouette emerged, extending a clawed hand toward her. The figure's voice, deep and resonant, offered a sliver of hope, asking if she was a survivor and beckoning her to follow. That same powerful hand had once descended to pat her head with unexpected tenderness, providing a moment of solace that mirrored the boy's current actions perfectly. The memory shatters as she jolts awake, her heart hammering against her ribs as she realizes with horror that she actually succumbed to sleep. She stares ahead in disbelief, grappling with the lapse in her own iron will. Sitting up, she broods over the perceived humiliation of being lulled to sleep by her supposed enemy, yet she cannot deny the physical refreshment that the brief rest provided. Her thoughts turn back to the boy, wondering what became of him while she was unconscious. Turning her gaze downward, she discovers that he has also drifted off, his small form curled up peacefully beside her. She remains still, watching the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest in the quiet room. He remains lost in a deep, tranquil slumber, his face softened by the innocence of dreams. Watching him, the Demon King feels the heat rise to her cheeks as she realizes that once again, her enemy lies completely vulnerable before her. This is the perfect moment to strike, the chance she has been waiting for to reclaim her dominance. Despite the opportunity, she finds her resolve wavering as she gazes at his peaceful expression. With a silent sigh of resignation, she decides to let the moment pass, telling herself that her dark designs can wait for another day. Instead of striking, she finds herself drawn closer, seeking the same comfort he seems to find in his rest, and eventually pulls him into a gentle embrace. The heavy weight of her arm now rests protectively over him as they both drift into a shared, quiet repose. In the stillness of the room, the boundaries between sworn enemies blur, replaced by the rhythmic breathing of two souls finding an unexpected sanctuary in each other's presence. This fragile peace is shattered when she suddenly bolts upright, her eyes wide with shock as the morning light filters into the room. A wave of panic washes over her as she realizes she has succumbed to the very exhaustion she intended to exploit, having slept far longer than she ever intended while her supposed captive remains blissfully unaware. Under a heavy morning downpour, the Demon King stands alone, contemplating the weather. She decides that staying indoors is the wisest course of action, yet her thoughts immediately drift to you, a confident smile spreading across her face as she anticipates his predictable behavior. She continues her stroll through the rain-slicked grounds, but her composure is shattered when she accidentally plunges into a deep puddle with a startled cry. The sudden splash reveals a strange, muddy shape rising from the water, catching her completely off guard. She stares in disbelief as the muddy creature reveals itself to be the young hero. Despite the torrential rain, he had been training so intensely that he became completely caked in mud, much to her exasperation. Later, she takes charge of cleaning him up, scrubbing his hair in a warm bath while he insists he can do it himself. The thick lather piles high atop his head as she continues her playful but thorough cleaning. The sight of his small, confused face proves too much for her to handle, and she impulsively pulls him into a tight embrace, declaring herself defeated by his sheer cuteness while he wonders what has come over her. As the steam clears, a prominent, jagged scar is visible on her chest, serving as a silent testament to the violent struggle she once faced to emerge as the victor and claim the throne of the abyss. She feels a wave of embarrassment wash over her, despite the victory that secured her title. To her, winning wasn't enough. She felt a desperate need to demonstrate overwhelming power to prove she was truly worthy of being the Demon King. This insecurity stemmed from the whispers of her subjects, who compared her unfavorably to her predecessor. They saw her battle scars not as marks of triumph, but as evidence of her inexperience and weakness. The weight of their judgment haunted her, fueling a fear that she would remain an unworthy ruler. She felt she couldn't even stand before the memory of the one who came before her if she continued to show such vulnerability. Now, as she sits in the warm water, she traces the jagged line of the scar on her chest. While she is no longer the rookie she once was, the memory of that pain remains, though the context of the wound feels different in this quiet moment with the boy. With a sudden burst of resolve, she declares her intent to defeat the hero and finally prove her strength. Her words spark an immediate, joyful reaction from the young boy, who cheers with unbridled enthusiasm, finding her ambition truly awesome. He looks at her with genuine respect, noting that she fought for a purpose and refused to give up even after taking such heavy damage. His eyes shine with admiration as he gives her burden a new name, calling the mark on her skin a wound of honor. The unexpected praise catches her off guard, her eyes widening as she processes his simple, heartfelt declaration that her scar is actually really cool. A soft, genuine smile touches her lips as she realizes he truly sees the mark in a positive light. The shame she once felt begins to dissipate, replaced by a quiet sense of validation. The boy's excitement grows as he proclaims his desire to earn a similar wound of honor one day after facing the Demon King himself. From the edge of the bath, a small companion offers a reality check, suggesting he should probably start by trying to defeat a simple slime first. He had just declared his desire for a wound of honor, leaving her stunned. As she sat in the warm bath, the soap bubbles clinging to her skin, she repeated his words in disbelief, her eyes wide with shock at the thought of him seeking such a mark through combat with her. Her gaze drifted to the small, translucent creature bobbing nearby, its simple form a stark contrast to the gravity of the boy's request. She found herself questioning if she could ever truly bring herself to mar his soft, youthful skin with the jagged scars of battle. This internal conflict sent a surge of heat through her, and she suddenly bolted upright in the water, her face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and agitation. Confused by her sudden outburst, the young hero could only call out to her, wondering what had caused such a dramatic reaction. To mask her inner turmoil, she immediately shifted back into her role as a stern mentor, barking orders for him to cease his relaxation and return to his grueling training. She knew that to maintain her resolve and keep fighting as the Demon King, she had to grow stronger and eliminate any trace of hesitation from her heart. He stands at the edge of a dense, foreboding forest, questioning if this is truly the site of his survival training and whether monsters lurk within the shadows of the trees. He explains that he will be spending an entire week in the wilderness, a trial set by Noel to prove his worth as a true hero. With a determined wave, he insists on doing this alone, asking his master not to intervene or help him in any way. The Demon King watches him, silently acknowledging the forest's lethality. It is a place where the dense foliage swallows the lost, and the resident monsters show no mercy to intruders. She envisions a future where the boy is broken and pleading for her assistance, a scenario she tells herself she will ignore to maintain her distance. Putting on a facade of cold indifference, she declares that as the Demon King, she will simply bear witness to the hero's inevitable demise, though her internal conflict is betrayed by her swirling thoughts. As they venture deeper into the woods, the young hero repeats his plea for her to stay out of his way, determined to face the challenges on his own terms without any demonic aid. Almost immediately, his resolve is tested when he trips over a protruding root, tumbling face first into the dirt with a startled cry. His clumsiness continues as he blunders straight into a massive, sticky spider web, leaving him flailing while his companion looks on with a blank, unimpressed expression. Reaching a nearby stream, he attempts to catch a meal by thrusting a makeshift spear into the water, but the fish are far too quick for his uncoordinated strikes. Frustrated by his lack of progress, he grumbles about the difficulty of fishing, prompting her to finally offer a bit of practical advice. A net would be far more effective than his spear. He continues to struggle with the makeshift spear, his frustration mounting as the fish elude him. The Demon King watches from the bank, her patience wearing thin as he mentions the advice given to him by the great sage. The mere mention of the woman's name causes a vein to throb in the Demon King's forehead, her jealousy flaring at the boy's reliance on another's teachings. The young boy's eyes sparkle with a fierce, innocent determination despite the difficulty. He grips the wooden shaft tightly, declaring that the trial only has meaning if he succeeds through his own effort, driven by the dream of one day becoming a hero worthy of respect. He steps deeper into the cool stream, ignoring the chill to focus entirely on the movement beneath the surface. Convinced this is a hurdle he must clear alone. His clumsy attempts are observed by the Demon King with a mixture of amusement and growing concern. She contemplates the wisdom of letting him struggle, fearing that his stubbornness might lead to his own undoing. Yet she finds herself instinctively wanting to intervene as she has so many times before. She watches as the boy's movements become more frantic as hunger begins to gnaw at him, his splashes only serving to scare away any potential prey. Watching his desperate flailing, she realizes with a sinking feeling that without food, his survival test will end in a very literal and permanent failure. As he continues to flounder, her gaze softens, though her internal conflict remains sharp. She knows that if she remains a mere spectator, the boy's reckless persistence might very well be the end of him. She watches as disaster strikes and he loses his footing, plunging face first into the shallow water with a pathetic splash. Nearby, a dark, clawed hand twitches with the urge to reach out, while the Demon King battles her own vow of non-interference, her resolve crumbling as she watches him struggle to right himself. He emerges from the water with a triumphant shout, a silver fish skewered perfectly on the end of his harpoon. Behind him, the Demon King's eyes widen in genuine shock, her mouth agape at the sudden and unexpected success. He dances with joy, waving his prize in the air with a wide, toothy grin. The Demon King, however, turns away with a huff of feigned annoyance, her cheeks flushed as she tells him not to get too excited, hiding the fact that her own secret intervention might have played a role in his victory. While he finally succumbs to exhaustion as night falls over the forest, falling into a deep sleep by the warmth of the campfire, the Demon King sits nearby. She watches over his peaceful form with a quiet, contemplative expression, admitting to herself that his resilience, while clumsy, was exactly what she expected. She holds the young boy close, a flicker of doubt crossing her mind as she questions her own motivations for such tenderness. The boy, stirring in her arms, mentions that someone named Noel instructed him to act, leaving her puzzled by the unfamiliar name. Suddenly, a voice cuts through the quiet of the woods, accusing her of interfering with the boy's progress. A tall, cloaked figure walks away into the foliage, their presence as unexpected as their sharp critique. The newcomer turns, revealing herself to be a woman of scholarly appearance, clutching an ornate staff. She explains that a powerful aura like hers naturally repels the very creatures the boy needs to face, before addressing her directly by her true title, the Demon King. Bristling at the intrusion and the sudden exposure of her identity, the Dark Sovereign demands to know who stands before her. With a serene smile, the woman introduces herself as Noel, the great sage destined to guide the hero on his path. Abyss watches the newcomer with intense suspicion, her mind racing with questions about how this stranger could possibly know her true identity as the Demon King. She watches in stunned silence as the woman pulls the young hero into a warm embrace, greeting him with a familiarity that catches everyone off guard. Demanding answers, the Dark-Horned ruler listens as the newcomer introduces herself as the great sage Noel, a member of a lineage dedicated to the protection and training of heroes throughout the ages. Yu is overjoyed to see her, confirming their deep bond. The boy beams with pride, explaining his dedication to the trials set before him, while the sage offers her praise, much to the silent irritation of his other mentor. Confusion clouds the Demon King's thoughts as she realizes the boy is being shaped by two very different masters, each with their own hidden agendas. The sage gently suggests that the young hero take some time to rest, before turning her attention toward the master with a request for a private conversation, her tone shifting to one of serious intent. Once they are alone, she drops all pretenses, addressing the dark-clad woman by her true title and offering a surprising vow of silence regarding her secret. Wary of a trap, the Demon King questions the sage's motives, only to be met with the claim that her only concern is the boy's future and well-being. The sage warns of a dire consequence. Should the boy ever learn the truth of his master's nature, the shock would shatter his spirit and cause his burgeoning power to erupt in a catastrophic spiral of destruction. She emphasizes that his heart is still too immature to handle such a revelation. This grim prophecy leaves the ruler in a state of quiet reflection, the weight of the secret now heavier than ever as she considers the fragile heart of the boy she is training. She stood firm, her gaze clashing with the great sage's as she made her position clear. She would not tolerate any further interference in her affairs. Despite the tension, she knew she couldn't give up on her own objectives, even as the sage reminded herself of her duty to protect the hero. Stepping forward, the Darkhorn Master announced that the day's training was about to begin. The two women locked eyes in a silent, electric struggle for dominance, each harboring their own secret motives, while the young boy offered a cheerful morning greeting, oblivious to the friction between them. They immediately began to bicker over the boy's curriculum, with the master insisting on a grueling sword session, while the sage countered that magical proficiency was equally vital for his growth. The sage eventually won the dispute, leading the boy away with promises of unlocking his true potential through the mystic arts, leaving the master standing alone in the clearing. She watched them depart, a wave of irritation and confusion washing over her as she struggled to understand why the sight of them together bothered her so deeply. To mask her growing unease, she tried to convince herself that this was all merely a calculated strategy to lower the hero's guard, though the heat rising to her cheeks told a different story. Meanwhile, as they walked through the woods, the sage questioned the boy about his master's temperament, only to be met with his unwavering defense of the woman's kindness and strength. He spoke with a radiant smile, declaring that his master was the person he admired most in the world and someone of immense importance to his life. This revelation left the sage visibly unsettled, realizing that the bond between the hero and the Demon King had grown far deeper than she had anticipated, making their eventual separation an urgent necessity. She leans in close, her expression a mix of determination and a strange sort of warmth as she places a hand over her heart. With a firm yet inviting tone, she declares that the two of them will soon set out on a journey together, leaving no room for argument. Her words leave the young boy staring back in stunned silence, his eyes wide with confusion as he tries to process the sudden proposal. A single word of bewilderment escapes him as the weight of the situation begins to sink in. The great sage leans in close to the young boy, her voice calm and certain as she proposes that they embark on a journey together. She insists that this path is for his own benefit, though the prospect clearly catches him off guard. He begins to stammer a protest, his eyes wide with uncertainty, but she gently cuts him off, promising to remain by his side through every trial. Their quiet moment is shattered by a thunderous command to wait, echoing across the clearing. The Demon King strides forward, her presence commanding as she declares there is no need for such a departure, suggesting instead that the boy's training can continue under her watch. The sage remains unmoved, coldly stating that the matter is none of the monarch's concern, which only fuels the other woman's insistence that she will not allow her student to be taken away. She reaches out, beckoning the boy to her side, while the sage simultaneously commands him to follow her instead. Internally, the Dark Monarch frets, realizing that if the boy leaves with her rival, her own chances of ever truly besting him in combat will vanish entirely. The sage's composure slips as she accuses her rival of blatant deception, prompting a furious retort and a demand for silence. As the two powerful women begin to bicker and shove one another like common squabblers, the young hero stands between them, his confusion mounting. Amidst the chaos, the sage continues her sharp analysis, pointing out that the monarch only stays close to the boy to wait for a moment of weakness. She then leans in, her glasses glinting as she whispers a devastating truth. Despite all the posturing, the Demon King has no actual intention of taking the hero's life. This accusation strikes a nerve, causing the monarch to recoil and roar her defiance, reasserting her identity as the ruler of demons and her vow to defeat the hero personally. The sage, however, remains unconvinced, dismissing the outburst as a lie. Seeing the two people he admires most locked in such a bitter conflict, the boy finally breaks, tears streaming down his face as he blames himself for the discord. He collapses under the weight of his own perceived inadequacy, convinced that his indecision has made him a failure as a hero. He is losing control, his latent power erupting in a violent surge of energy that forces everyone back. The sage cries out in alarm, realizing that the emotional strain has caused his abilities to spiral beyond his command. Even the Demon Queen finds herself unable to bridge the gap as the raw force pushes against her, the air crackling with unstable magic. Seeing the boy in distress, she allows her instincts to take over, her body moving before her mind can even process the danger. She plunges into the heart of the magical storm, determined to find a way to suppress the runaway energy and bring him back from the brink, regardless of the toll it takes on her own form. Once the light fades, the young hero remains huddled on the ground, tears streaming down his face as he laments that the chaos was entirely his fault. He looks up in shock, noticing the fresh cuts and blood marking his master's face, but she merely asks with a gentle, concerned tone if he has finally found his calm. She pulls him close, her expression softening as she dismisses his concerns about her well-being. She explains that these marks are not a burden but a badge of honor, earned because she was able to protect someone truly precious to her. The warmth of her embrace begins to wash away the boy's guilt, replacing it with a profound sense of security. Watching the tender moment from a distance, the sage adjusts her glasses and concludes that her presence is no longer required. She decides to withdraw, sensing that the bond between the boy and his master is what will truly heal the wounds of the day, and she quietly prepares to depart the scene. The Demon Queen looks down at the boy, reminding him that their work is far from over and they still have unfinished business to attend to. Meanwhile, the sage confirms her departure, noting that her responsibilities elsewhere demand her attention, though she warns those remaining to be ready for the challenges that are surely coming. As she turns to leave, she offers a final, quiet word of care, urging them to look after themselves. The Demon Queen watches her go with a stoic expression, realizing that while the immediate crisis is past, they cannot afford to linger in this place for much longer if they hope to stay ahead of their enemies. With the heavy atmosphere finally lifting, the boy beams with a renewed sense of purpose, clutching his wooden sword tightly. He looks up with bright, hopeful eyes, eagerly asking if they can continue their training together when the sun rises again, his spirit fully restored by his master's kindness. She responds with a wide, triumphant grin, promising that they will indeed resume their work without hesitation. The sage watches them one last time from the path, seeing the master and apprentice reunited in spirit and purpose before she finally disappears into the distance. The great sage Noelle is known throughout history for nurturing the heroes who defeat demons, yet her presence remains shrouded in mystery. For the Demon King, the objective is clear. She must investigate this woman to ensure the hero's ultimate defeat. As they walk through the woods, the young boy turns to his companion, expressing a sudden desire to learn more about the great sage. The request catches her off guard, prompting a hesitant response. She stammers, her face flushing as she searches for a plausible excuse. She cannot simply admit her goal is to vanquish the hero, leaving the boy to wonder at her strange behavior. Finally, she bursts out with a declaration that the sage is her rival, her face burning with a mix of intensity and deep embarrassment. The boy repeats the word with a look of pure confusion, recalling the intense training session he witnessed between the two of them. She explains that finding a worthy opponent is a rare feat at her level of power. While reluctant to give too much credit, she admits that the sage's agility and magical precision are truly remarkable. Hearing this, a quiet realization dawns on the boy. He has finally found the kind of inspiration he has been searching for. The Demon King continues, stating that she must study her opponent further to prepare for their next inevitable encounter, but her words seem to weigh heavily on the boy. He looks away, his voice small as he admits that he knows very little about the sage and therefore cannot offer any help. The rejection leaves her momentarily stunned. With a sudden burst of independence, he announces his intention to train alone for the day. As he runs off to push himself through grueling exercises in the forest and on the village roads, she is left standing in the clearing, bewildered by his sudden change in heart. He had left her, and the realization hit the Demon King like a physical blow. She stood frozen, her expression a mask of disbelief and burgeoning heartbreak as she questioned if it were even possible that he had truly come to hate her. She remained alone in the quiet woods, the silence of the clearing a stark reminder of his absence. Looking down at the empty path, she resigned herself to the fact that he would not be returning today, or perhaps ever again. The Demon Queen felt the surrounding forest closing in as she tried to steady her resolve. She reminded herself that her initial purpose had been cold and calculated, to find the boy's weaknesses, and she told herself she could not afford to let her spirit be broken now. Her hand tightened into a fist, knuckles whitening as she tried to redefine their bond. It was never a simple matter of master and student. Her ultimate goal, the very core of her being, was to defeat the hero, and she clung to that mission to mask her pain. She felt this resolve waver as a memory of him surfaced, his face buried in his hands as he wept. She recalled her own desperation, pleading with him not to turn away and wondering if a rivalry would be easier to bear than this fractured mentorship, while he apologized for his perceived lack of heroism. She remembered the softness in her own voice when she had told him that his well-being was her greatest concern. Even then, she had tried to frame it through the lens of her duty, claiming that as the Demon King, ensuring his growth was merely a means to her top priority of defeating him. The boy had looked up at her then, his face flushed with a pure, radiant joy that she could still see vividly. Her words had clearly reached him, sparking a moment of profound connection that now felt like a distant dream. Now, the Demon King stared into the distance with a hardened gaze, accepting the path he had chosen. She whispered a silent acknowledgement to her former student, recognizing that one day, they would truly face each other as rivals. She held onto the memory of their shared laughter and his reaching hand, which felt like a fleeting sunbeam before a storm. She knew this peaceful interlude was over and that she had to prepare for the inevitable conflict that was fast approaching. Unbeknownst to them, their every moment was being observed through a shimmering crystal orb by shadowy figures. They watched the scene of the Demon King and the boy with cold amusement, declaring that her end was near and that the information gathered would be most useful for their own dark designs. Abyss is alone, reflecting. She knows that to maintain her authority among her subordinates, she must eventually defeat the hero. The weight of her title as the Demon King presses heavily upon her as she stares at the mask that symbolizes her power. Her solitude is interrupted when Xance, her strategist, marches into the room. He questions her loyalty, his voice dripping with a challenge that catches her off guard. He demands to know if this is how a queen who swore loyalty to the Demon Kingdom should behave. She stands tall, her face hidden behind her ornate mask, but the strategist remains undeterred. He openly charges her with behavior unfit for a ruler, questioning her very right to sit upon the throne. Infuriated by the blatant insubordination, she raises a hand, dark energy crackling around her fingers as she warns him to back his accusations with evidence. She declares that she is fulfilling her duties and protecting her people, her voice echoing with a dangerous edge. He remains calm, holding up a glowing orb as he addresses the gathered subordinates. While acknowledging that she claims to fight the hero for their sake, he asks how she can possibly explain the evidence he is about to reveal. The orb projects a clear image of her and the young hero in a moment of apparent intimacy, sending a shockwave through the room. The skeletal subordinates gasp in disbelief, their hollow sockets widening at the sight of their queen so close to their sworn enemy. She begins to sweat, her composure crumbling as the whispers of her subjects fill the air. They murmur about the undeniable closeness between her and the boy, their faith in her leadership visibly wavering. Desperate to regain control of the situation, she stammeringly claims that the scene they witnessed is merely part of a grand strategy. She tries to convince them that she has gathered intelligence, but her voice lacks its usual conviction. The strategist seizes the moment, shouting to the crowd that the Demon King has been deceiving them all along. He proclaims that her relationship with the hero is a betrayal and that any talk of defeating him is nothing more than a complete lie. He continues his relentless interrogation, his voice echoing through the throne room as he labels the Demon King a sneaky little creep for her alleged alliance with the hero. Abyss, visibly shaken and perspiring, desperately maintains that her proximity to the boy is merely a calculated strategy to lower his guard before striking. The strategist remains unmoved by her excuses, pointing out the numerous missed opportunities she had to eliminate the hero if her intentions were truly hostile. She can only stammer in response, her composure disintegrating under the weight of his logic. She is caught off guard as he leans in with a predatory grin, posing the question that strikes at the heart of her conflict, asking if she harbors special feelings for their sworn enemy. The accusation sends a surge of heat to her face, her eyes wide with a mixture of panic and realization. She attempts a feeble defense, claiming their encounters were nothing more than coincidence, but her words ring hollow even to her own ears. Beside her, the small slime and the strategist watch with varying degrees of skepticism, unconvinced by her frantic denials. Her silence hangs heavy over the room as she looks down, the weight of her secret finally becoming unbearable. Suddenly, she snaps, clutching her mask and shouting a confession that echoes through the halls. She admits to the bond she shares with the hero. She is left defenseless as he seizes the moment of her admission, invoking the ancient mandates of demon law, specifically Article 666, declaring that her actions have rendered her untrustworthy in the eyes of the kingdom. He watches as she is suddenly restrained in a heavy wooden pillory, her authority stripped away in an instant. With a flourish, the strategist announces that she is to be put on trial, facing the dreaded Demon King judgment for her perceived betrayal. The grand hall of the Demon Castle is filled with tension as the formal trial of the Demon King begins. Abyss stands at the center, her face hidden behind her ornate mask, as the announcement of the proceedings echoes through the chamber. Behind that mask, her eyes narrow with the weight of the situation. The law is absolute. If the verdict is guilty, her throne will be stripped away, and the final decision rests entirely in the hands of her subordinates. Immediately, the assembly descends into a cacophony of conflicting voices. While the small slime creature cries out in her defense, insisting she has betrayed no one, others roar back with accusations of a grave crime, certain of her guilt. The accusations grow more specific and humiliating, pointing to her suspiciously close relationship with the hero as evidence of betrayal. Overwhelmed by the shame and the absurdity of the claims, she slumps forward, wishing for a quick end to the ordeal. Seeing the chaos spiral out of control, the presiding judge slams his gavel down repeatedly. He bellows for order, trying to silence the brawling factions of demons who are now physically clashing over the verdict. Watching from the sidelines, the strategist Xantz permits himself a cold smirk, realizing his plan to sow internal division is working perfectly. He declares a stalemate for the day and commands that the Demon King be taken to the dungeons until the trial resumes. As she is led away in chains, he leans in to deliver a final, stinging insult. He mockingly assures her that her life is safe, not out of mercy, but because he deems her too insignificant to even bother killing, leaving her trembling with humiliation. He watches her retreating figure with a predatory glint in his eyes. This is the culmination of a long-held grudge, and he is now certain that the path to the throne is finally within his reach. Locked away in the cold silence of the prison, she stares through the bars, her thoughts drifting to the legacy of the ruler who came before her. That predecessor had envisioned this place as a sanctuary where all demons could live in security, a dream now threatened by internal strife. She remembers the pure, unyielding hope of that vision, a dream she had made her own. Despite her current disgrace, the desire to protect that sanctuary remains the core of her being. She stood alone in the darkness of the dungeon, her mind racing with the weight of her title. To protect the sanctuary the previous ruler dreamed of, she knew she had to transcend her current limits. The thought of the hero burned in her mind. She needed the strength to defeat him, for the sake of every demon who looked to her for leadership. She could not afford to falter here. Her internal resolve was interrupted by familiar voices echoing through the cold stone corridor. A group of her most loyal subordinates, including the skeletal workers and her inner circle, appeared at the bars of her cell, calling out to her with reverence and desperation. They hadn't come empty-handed or without a plan. General Leon, a massive and imposing figure, revealed that he had managed to seize the cell key from one of Xantz's underlings. It was a bold act of defiance, taking advantage of the strategist's momentary lapse in oversight to stage a rescue. She questioned their motives, confused by their sudden rebellion against the court's ruling. They didn't hesitate, urging her to take a secret shortcut that would lead her directly to the hero's current location, insisting that her presence on the battlefield was more important than any legal verdict. Their eyes shone with an unwavering faith that moved her deeply. They pleaded with her to defeat the hero, believing that a decisive victory would be the only way to silence the critics and clear the shadows of doubt that Xantz had cast upon her reign. This outpouring of loyalty solidified her resolve, Embracing her identity as the Demon King, she accepted the burden of her duty once more. Today, she would not just fight. She would definitively end the threat posed by the hero for the sake of her people. Far from the dungeon, Xance watched the escape unfold through the swirling mists of his crystalline orb. A cold, calculating smile touched his lips as he noted that everything was proceeding exactly as he had orchestrated, his trap now fully set. Meanwhile, in the dappled sunlight of a nearby forest, the young hero practiced with his blade, unaware of the machinations in the castle. His face lit up with pure joy when he spotted a familiar figure approaching, and he called out to his mentor with excitement. She approached him, her face partially obscured by her mask, but the tension in her posture was palpable. The boy, oblivious to the change in her demeanor, expressed his relief, admitting he had begun to fear she wouldn't show up for their scheduled meeting. However, the warmth of the reunion was instantly shattered. As she stood before him, she delivered a cold, stinging rejection, declaring with absolute finality that she was not his master, severing their bond in a single, cruel breath. She looms over the young boy, her imposing figure casting a long shadow across the forest floor. With cold, unwavering resolve, she declares her true identity as the Demon King, shattering their bond with a chilling vow to take his life. The Demon King stands before the young boy, her voice echoing with a cold finality as she proclaims her title and her grim intent to end his life. Behind the dark mask, she steels her resolve, reminding herself that as the sovereign of the demon race, her duty must come before all else. Far away at her fortress, the air vibrates with the bloodthirsty cheers of her subjects, who demand the hero's head and urge their queen to show no restraint. Meanwhile, the high official stands tall in the halls of judgment, weaving a narrative of betrayal and guilt to ensure that her reign ends in disgrace, regardless of her popularity. Back on the battlefield, the boy struggles to understand the sudden shift in tone, questioning if this is merely another rigorous lesson, but she only offers a bittersweet smile, confirming that his training has indeed borne fruit as their blades finally meet. She clenches her gauntlet fist, hardening her heart against any lingering compassion as the young warrior groans in pain, pinned to the earth. Recalling a solemn vow made to the one who ruled before her, the queen gathers her strength, knowing that her legacy depends on her ability to strike down the very person she once protected. The boy's spirit begins to fracture under the weight of this perceived betrayal, causing his latent energies to surge violently and uncontrollably, much to the horror of the sage watching from the sidelines. The official continues his condemnation, suggesting that the queen's proximity to the boy was a calculated move to manage his volatile power, while the beast-like general seethes with regret for not ending the threat himself. With a piercing cry that tears through the air, she lunges forward for a final strike, her face a mask of desperate determination as the boy watches her approach in stunned silence. She sees her chance as the boy buckles under the weight of his own surging power. Recognizing his struggle to maintain control, she lunges forward, determined to end the confrontation while he is vulnerable. He is shattered, tears streaming down his face as the agonizing truth takes hold. He refuses to believe that his beloved mentor and the dreaded monarch are one and the same, his voice trembling with denial. Nearby, his companions watch in horror, their cries of alarm echoing his own internal devastation as the masked sovereign gazes back with a look of profound, silent sorrow. She is suddenly caught in a violent upheaval of power, a spray of crimson painting the air as a devastating blow connects. The force of the impact sends her reeling, her regal form collapsing as the light begins to fade from her eyes. The Demon King lies broken, blood staining her chest after a devastating strike. A voice cries out in desperation, urging her to stay conscious as her vision fades into darkness. The realization that a single blow from the boy had done this is the last thing she remembers. She eventually stirs, her eyes fluttering open to an unfamiliar ceiling. A calm voice reaches her, questioning if she has finally returned to the waking world. Disoriented, she can only manage to ask where she has been taken. Standing over her is the great sage, her expression a mix of relief and grim determination. The presence of such a powerful ally confirms the gravity of the situation. The sage explains that she had no choice but to treat the Demon King's severe injuries while she lay in a forced slumber. She then gestures toward the horizon, urging the fallen monarch to witness the current state of the world. Beyond the immediate shelter, the landscape is a scarred wasteland. Plumes of smoke rise from a shattered forest, marking a path of absolute destruction that stretches as far as the eye can see. The sage reveals the horrifying truth. The hero's latent power has completely spiraled out of control, fueling a 3-day rampage of unchecked devastation. The Demon King struggles to reconcile this news with her memory of the kind, smiling boy she once knew. With the situation desperate, the sage declares that only the Demon King possesses the strength to halt the hero's advance. Meanwhile, at the demon army's final stronghold, the soldiers scramble in terror as the unstoppable force draws near. He approaches the gates, his face cast in deep shadow and his body wreathed in a terrifying, crackling aura. The boy who was once a savior has become a silent harbinger of ruin. The general bellows for his forces to charge, refusing to let his men falter even in the face of certain death. In response, the hero unleashes a single, massive shockwave that tears through the earth and the front lines alike. Panic erupts within the castle walls as the defense crumbles. The judge, stripped of his usual composure, shrieks for a full retreat, cowardly demanding that others serve as a shield while the very foundations of their world tremble. He stood aside as the sovereign finally rose to her feet, her presence commanding the room even in her weakened state. A desperate subordinate clung to her, weeping and begging for salvation from the encroaching doom. Seeing her standing once more, the gathered survivors erupted in a mixture of shock and profound relief. The skeletal warriors and weary attendants could hardly believe their eyes, their voices trembling as they hailed the return of their master. She stepped forward with a heavy but steady gait, her resolve hardening as she surveyed the devastation. With a calm, authoritative tone, she commanded her subjects to stand down, declaring that she would handle the threat alone. Beneath her mask, she weighed the gravity of the situation, acknowledging the sheer insanity of the task ahead. The realization that the boy had reacted to her voice offered a sliver of hope, a sign that his spirit was not yet entirely consumed by the darkness. Facing the source of the destruction, she called out to the young boy, her voice a desperate plea for him to regain his senses. She knew that regardless of the cost, halting his mindless rampage was the only way to ensure the survival of her people. He, however, was no longer the boy she knew, his eyes burning with a hollow, murderous light as he swore to strike her down. She felt the air vibrate with his surging power, realizing that every passing second made him more lethal and that a single misstep would result in her total obliteration. The boy lunged with terrifying speed, forcing her to weave through a barrage of devastating strikes that tore through the very ground. From the sidelines, her loyal followers watched in terror, their cries of encouragement nearly drowned out by the sound of the unfolding battle. They feared the end of their kind was at hand as the boy's power continued to swell uncontrollably. Undeterred, she stood her ground against the onslaught, shouting his name once more in a final attempt to draw his focus and anchor him to reality. He remained standing amidst a swirling vortex of raw energy, seemingly deaf to her words. A heavy silence settled in her heart as she wondered if the connection they once shared had finally been severed beyond repair. Her hand tightened into a fist, the leather of her glove creaking under the strain of her resolve. With a heavy heart, she accepted that words were no longer enough and prepared to take the drastic measures necessary to end the conflict. The masked sovereign stands tall, her presence a testament to the eternal struggle between her kind and the humans. She declares her identity with a cold finality, vowing that no matter how many times she is defeated, she will continue to fight for the survival of the demon race. Facing her, the young hero is overcome with grief, his face streaked with tears as he vehemently rejects the reality before him. He refuses to believe that the monstrous figure standing there is the same person who guided him, even as she declares that their journey has reached its inevitable conclusion. As his cries echo, her eyes widen behind the cold, unyielding mask, shimmering with a sudden, uncontrollable surge of emotion that threatens to shatter her composure. Memories of a different life flood back, showing moments of shared meals and quiet companionship that now feel like a lifetime ago. In those distant days, he had been nothing more than a determined child, looking up at her with pure admiration as he begged to be taken in as her pupil, calling out to her as his master. Returning to the harsh present, she pulls the trembling boy into a sudden, desperate embrace, her voice a soft whisper of apology that cuts through the tension of the battlefield as she utters his name. As he is held close, the familiar warmth of her presence washes over him, confirming his deepest suspicions and causing his sword to slip from his nerveless fingers. He realizes with a bittersweet ache that despite the horns and the mask, she is still the same master he has always known. She, however, is consumed by a sense of profound failure, the voices in her mind branding her a disgrace for her inability to strike him down, viewing it as a betrayal of her duty. Later, standing alone amidst the cold stone arches of her fortress, she surveys her domain with a heavy heart, acknowledging that while the immediate threat has passed, her honor lies in ruins. As a voice calls out her title in the distance, she makes a final, somber request, asking only for the chance to step down from her throne with whatever shred of dignity she has left. She stands bewildered as the courtroom erupts in a sudden, jubilant roar. Above the throng of cheering demons, a massive banner unfurls, declaring a verdict of not guilty in bold, celebratory strokes. This unexpected turn stems from a new narrative taking hold, that the demon lord's restraint of the hero was a calculated necessity, as neither General Leon nor Lord Zansu possessed the strength to match the boy's power. The crowd now believes this was all a masterstroke of her design, a secret plan to tame the hero beforehand, effectively turning a perceived failure into a strategic triumph that leaves the common soldiers in awe. He shouts an objection, his voice cracking against the wall of public sentiment, but the verdict stands firm, leaving him isolated in his dissent as the court's decision is finalized. The official remains defiant, sneering that even a legal acquittal does not erase her inability to strike the final blow, questioning if such a leader truly deserves the throne of the demon realm. She remains silent, her gaze hardening as the official continues his tirade, insisting that the demon populace will never accept this outcome as it stands. However, the tide of opinion has already turned, and the surrounding demons begin to jeer at him, mocking his desperate nitpicking and calling his behavior pathetic in the face of the verdict. Their taunts are punctuated by the sudden, looming presence of the general, who reveals he has uncovered the official's treacherous attempts to blackmail the crown by exploiting the demon lord's perceived weaknesses. He wastes no time in ordering the disgraced official to be dragged away to a cell, noting that this trial has brought many other hidden crimes to light that will now be addressed. As the chaos of the arrest subsides, she can only watch in stunned silence while her subjects marvel at her supposed foresight, convinced she had the hero under her thumb all along. She stands amidst a sea of adoring subjects, yet the weight of their cheers feels heavier than any chain. The demon populace is in a frenzy of newfound loyalty, roaring their commitment to follow her for life now that they believe she has successfully subjugated the hero. To them, the boy is no longer a threat, but a tool under her absolute command. However, beneath her stoic mask, a cold sweat breaks out as she grapples with the mounting complexity of her situation. The lie that saved her has become a cage, and as the crowd celebrates her supposed tactical genius, she wonders how much longer she can keep the truth hidden before the burden of these expectations finally crushes her. The day after the hero's rampage, the Demon King stands amidst the ruins of the battlefield, contemplating the lingering threat that still hangs over the land. She reflects on the necessity of maintaining control, even if it means deceiving her own subordinates. To her, the path forward is clear. If the hero is defeated, the chaos will finally be resolved. However, the weight of a single, devastating truth hangs over her. The boy has discovered her true identity as the Demon Lord. He can no longer see her as his master, and the sting of his silent accusation of being a liar haunts her. Despite the rift between them, she watches from the shadows as he begins to practice magic, compelled to monitor his progress. The young boy is filled with a new, fierce resolve, believing that mastering hero magic is the only way to strike down the Demon Lord once and for all. This unique power, a gift only he can wield, was a clever suggestion from the great sage El, though the strategic details of its origin seem secondary to the boy's current drive. He pushes himself to the absolute limit, his face set in grim determination as he vows to grow stronger for the inevitable confrontation. Watching him from afar, she is struck by the realization that his intent is genuine. He is truly committed to her destruction, viewing her only as the enemy he must overcome. Her hands tremble and then clench into tight, white-knuckled fists as the reality of their fractured bond settles in. Standing solitary against the darkness, she accepts the inevitable, reminding herself that she was the one who chose to reveal the truth in the first place. She stands firm, her resolve hardening as she declares her identity as the Demon Lord to those gathered behind her. To protect her people, she vows to strike down the boy before his hero magic can fully manifest, regardless of the bond they once shared. Her subordinates, the judge and General Leon, watch with grim intensity as she prepares to face the inevitable conflict. Suddenly, a surge of magical energy erupts around the young boy, and a flowing cape materializes from thin air, fluttering behind him as he gasps in shock at the sudden transformation. He exclaims with joy that the hero magic finally worked, but his mentor remains skeptical, pointing out that the grand display of power resulted in nothing more than a simple piece of clothing. He quickly defends the transformation, explaining that his deep admiration for her inspired the look, which he believes makes him appear much more formidable and worthy of his title. Standing side by side with her, he beams with pride at their matching silhouettes, unaware of the internal turmoil he is causing. She watches him closely, a strange sensation washing over her. Though he seems unchanged in spirit, the sight of him in his new attire stirs an unfamiliar warmth within her heart that she struggles to understand. A soft blush creeps across her cheeks as she gazes at him, a rare, genuine smile touching her lips while she revels in the simple joy of his presence. Deciding to overlook his antics for the moment, she maintains her composure while the great sage interjects, reminding the boy of the last time he tapped into his power. He had gone completely berserk, and as the sage points out his lack of memory regarding the event, he can only look on in utter confusion, having no recollection of the danger he posed just the day before. The young hero, Yu, is paralyzed with fear as spectral figures loom over him. He scrambles away, his face a mask of pure terror, while his master watches from a distance, her expression unreadable. This fear stems from a warning shared earlier by the great sage. El had cautioned that if the hero were to drink from the spring in the caves of lost souls, his power would grow exponentially. Hearing this, the Demon King realized she had to intervene immediately to prevent him from becoming an unstoppable threat. Back in the present, she watches as he is swarmed by a horde of mischievous spirits. The boy is completely overwhelmed, his usual bravery replaced by a frantic, wide-eyed panic as the ghosts dance around him. These undead monstrosities, ranging from grinning skeletons to bloated zombies, seem to take a sadistic pleasure in his distress. He can barely find the words to express how much these creatures unsettle him in such a desolate place. He collapses into a fit of tears, lamenting a lifelong trauma. While he grew accustomed to the spirits within the familiar walls of the castle, being hunted by them in the dark, damp depths of a dungeon has always been his greatest nightmare. Despite the dire situation, the boy tries to draw his sword, but his hands tremble so violently he can't even close the distance. Observing his pathetic display, the Demon King realizes this is the perfect moment to strike and end his journey once and for all. She looks down at him, her eyes hidden in shadow, unable to mask her disgust. To her, seeing the supposed savior of the realm reduced to a quivering mess is nothing short of pathetic. Clenching her fist, she reminds herself of the fundamental truth of her world. These undead are not just monsters. They are demons, her own kin, and there is absolutely nothing for a true ruler to fear. With a surge of dark energy, she lunges forward, determined to seize the opportunity and strike him down while he is vulnerable. The hero can only let out a distorted scream of terror as his master closes in for the kill. She looms over the terrified boy, her spectral minions swarming the dark cavern as his piercing scream echoes against the stone walls. In the chaos, he cries out in confusion, barely able to process the danger as she prepares to strike, her her own expression hidden behind her mask. Her assault is suddenly interrupted when the boy's fear transforms into a protective rage, and he roars for the spirits to stop bullying his master. A violent shockwave of pure energy erupts from his small frame, obliterating the ghosts and shattering the ground beneath them in a blinding flash of power. He stands at the center of the devastation, radiating a level of power so immense that it leaves her trembling in disbelief. The sheer force of his awakening carves a path through the cavern, leaving the legendary spring in ruins as the air hums with residual magic and dust settles over the wreckage. He quickly rushes to her side, his eyes wide with genuine concern as he asks if she is hurt. Caught off guard by his sudden transition from a destructive powerhouse back to a caring child, she finds herself blushing furiously, her heart racing as she realizes he acted solely out of a desire to protect her. She turns away, struggling to maintain her dignity, while claiming that she was merely keeping an eye on him to ensure his safety. Though she praises his growth and the strength he displayed, her internal composure is shattered, even as he beams with pride and relief at her words. Looking back at the wreckage of the spring, she marvels at the fact that he managed to remain conscious after such a massive release of energy. The realization that he is beginning to control this overwhelming power fills her with a mixture of awe and uncertainty about the true extent of the hero's potential. The demon lord stands alone, her mind racing with the need to maintain her dignity. She calls out for the young hero, determined to seize this moment to finally defeat him and prove her worth. However, a sudden, involuntary spasm interrupts her thoughts, causing her to jerk unexpectedly. As the boy approaches, he notices her strange behavior and asks if something is the matter. She quickly turns away, her voice strained as she insists that nothing is wrong, desperately trying to hide her growing discomfort and the rhythmic twitching of her shoulders. Her face flushes with a deep, embarrassed heat as the hiccups continue unabated. She curses the timing of this affliction, feeling her composure slip away with every rhythmic jerk of her body, frustrated that such a trivial thing is ruining her moment of authority. She attempts to steady her breathing, telling herself that a few mere hiccups cannot possibly intimidate the ruler of the demon realm. Beside her, the boy watches in confusion, his concern only adding to her internal struggle to remain regal despite the persistent hic sounds escaping her lips. He suddenly cries out in alarm, his eyes wide with terror as he asks if this strange ailment is a sign of her impending death. The sheer absurdity of his panic catches her off guard, as he wonders aloud where such a violent reaction could have come from. She tries to soothe his irrational fears, dismissing the notion that 100 hiccups could be fatal as nothing more than a baseless superstition. Despite her reassurance, he remains frantic, insisting they find a cure immediately before the count reaches its supposed deadly limit. Another violent hiccup racks her frame, shattering any remaining pretense of control. She finds herself in the humiliating position of being vulnerable, wondering if this is truly how the great demon lord will be brought low, while the boy watches her with increasing desperation. The boy begins to scramble, shouting out various remedies he's heard of to stop the spasms. She can only watch in frustration, her magical focus completely disrupted by the constant, jarring interruptions from her own body, making it impossible to concentrate on her powers. They descend into a chaotic series of trials, with him urging her to drink water, hold her breath, and take deep lungfuls of air. She endures each attempt with grim determination, telling herself it is all a necessary sacrifice to regain her strength and eventually face him in battle as a proper rival. Eventually, both of them collapse onto the hard ground, completely spent from the ordeal. Despite their best efforts, the hiccups remain, leaving the mighty demon lord and her supposed rival defeated by a simple, stubborn quirk of biology as the boy lies there, utterly worn out. He begins to weep, his voice trembling as he recalls his grandfather. Seeing his distress, the demon lord steels her resolve, considering a more forceful approach to end this ordeal if necessary. The boy continues his tragic tale, explaining how his grandfather's hiccups were followed by a fatal coughing fit just a day later. She listens in silence, the weight of his trauma becoming clear as he describes the suddenness of that loss. He confesses that the thought of losing someone he loves and never seeing them again is more than he can bear. From her seat, she remains still, absorbing the depth of the young hero's fear and loneliness. Her eyes soften as she gazes at him, the usual coldness of her station replaced by a flicker of genuine empathy. Overcome by the memory, he buries his face and cries out to her, his voice muffled by the fabric as he seeks comfort. Tears strike the dry earth beneath them, each drop a testament to his grief. He struggles to find the words to explain the source of his desperation. Suddenly, he throws himself into her arms, clinging to her with all his strength while pleading for her not to leave him. She is momentarily stunned by the raw intensity of his embrace. A gentle smile touches her lips as she looks down at him, softly promising that a simple case of hiccups will not be her end. She pulls him closer, cradling him against her as she vows to stay by his side for the time being. Looking down with a hint of melancholy, she admits to herself that she has made another mistake in her handling of him, leaving the boy puzzled by her cryptic words. She stands in stunned silence as the boy clings to her, his face wet with tears of pure relief. He exclaims his joy that she isn't dying, noting with a shaky breath that her hiccups have finally ceased, proving his fears were unfounded. He stares blankly, a chilling realization dawning on him as he whispers the terrifying thought that death was even a possibility. His voice is small and fragile, but it is quickly drowned out by her sharp, concerned cry as she calls his name, trying to snap him out of his spiraling thoughts. From the mouth of the dark cave, their voices echo into the quiet landscape. He insists on helping her, his resolve hardening despite his fear, while she desperately tries to soothe him, urging the boy to remain calm. It was a strange conclusion to the day, one where the feared ruler of demons once again found herself unable to truly best the young hero. The young hero's eyes sparkle with innocent joy as he receives an unexpected gift from his master. He can hardly contain his excitement, asking with wide-eyed wonder if the present is truly meant for him. He expresses his heartfelt gratitude, bowing deeply while unaware of the dark intentions behind the gesture. His master watches him with a calculating smirk, internally mocking the foolish boy for falling so easily into her trap with the cursed artifact. This scheme had been meticulously planned in the cold halls of the demon castle, where she and a high official debated the helmet's efficacy. They were certain that once the hero donned the crown-like helm, he would instantly be transformed into a perfectly loyal servant, regardless of his previous status. She envisions a future where controlling the hero allows her to fulfill her duties as the demon lord and perhaps even break her own curse. With a decisive click, the boy secures the dark helmet over his head, the metal cold and heavy against his skin. The transformation is immediate and terrifyingly effective as he begins to train. He moves with a speed and ferocity he never possessed before, his blade carving through the air with lethal precision as his master commands him to demonstrate the full extent of his new power. Standing amidst a grove of freshly felled trees, the young warrior is a silent testament to the artifact's strength. It is clear that the helmet is drawing out every ounce of his latent potential, making him a formidable asset for the demon army's front lines. Approaching him with a satisfied nod, she offers words of praise for his exceptional performance. However, the boy remains eerily still, his face obscured by the dark visor and his presence feeling fundamentally altered. When he finally speaks, the words strike her like a physical blow. He looks directly at her, his gaze vacant and unfamiliar, and asks a single, devastating question. Who is that? A wave of unease washes over her as she realizes the price of this new power. She wonders if the helmet has done more than just grant him strength, perhaps overriding his very personality and memories in the process of making him a servant. Seeking answers, she enters the small cave where he had been staying, only to find a scattered pile of handwritten letters. They are all addressed to her, filled with his simple, earnest reports of his daily training and his unwavering devotion to the master who has now become a stranger to him. She stands silently in the dimly lit chamber, looking down at the boy who now kneels obediently at her feet. The cursed helmet conceals his face, and his voice is devoid of its usual warmth as he requests her next command, a perfect, hollow soldier. Her hand trembles slightly as she stares at the letters, her mind racing with conflicting thoughts. She tries to justify her actions, telling herself that absolute control over the hero is necessary for the demon race's conquest. Yet the loss of the boy's true self feels like a hollow victory. Memories of his bright, earnest smile flood her mind, accompanied by the simple, innocent words he had written in his letters. He had thanked her for everything and shared his small victories, like finally managing 10 push-ups, his genuine devotion to her clear in every stroke of the pen. The weight of her choice finally breaks through her stoic facade, and tears begin to well in her eyes. She realizes with a pang of regret that the emotional pain of losing his true affection is far greater than she ever anticipated. As she leans over him, a single, heavy tear escapes and falls, landing directly upon the cold, dark metal of the cursed artifact. In an instant, the helmet reacts to the salt and sorrow, shattering into 1,000 pieces with a sharp crack. The boy's eyes widen in shock as the magical constraint suddenly vanishes, leaving him blinking in the sudden light. He looks around in confusion, his memories seemingly returning as he wonders what he was just doing. She watches him, stunned, as she recalls a forgotten warning from a subordinate about the helmet's one true weakness. The ancient lore is revealed. The only way to break such a powerful curse is through the tears of a loved one. She immediately becomes flustered, loudly protesting that her reaction had nothing to do with love, even as the chronicler notes that her grand plan has failed once again. They stand before the grand entrance of the casino, a place the demon lord claims is the perfect training ground for one's luck. While the young hero looks on with wide-eyed wonder, his companion hides a darker motive behind her fan, whispering to herself about plunging him into the depths of despair under the guise of a simple lesson. Her plan is calculated. She knows the owner of this establishment is a demon who thrives on the exploitation of the very humans the boy is sworn to protect. She believes that witnessing such blatant corruption and ugliness will shatter his idealistic spirit. In that moment of inevitable disillusionment, she intends to strike, defeating the hero when his motivation has completely bottomed out. Unaware of the trap being laid, the boy approaches the slot machines with innocent enthusiasm, convinced that the game is a simple matter of matching symbols. His companion watches him, certain that his beginner's luck won't hold for long. However, the boy defies all expectations, hitting a jackpot on the slots before moving on to dominate the blackjack and poker tables with an almost supernatural streak of success. The surrounding crowd erupts in whispers, stunned by the sheer impossibility of his fortune as he amasses a mountain of chips. Seeing her plan go awry, the demon lord decides to take matters into her own hands, challenging him to a direct duel at the card table. Even then, the boy holds his own, revealing a straight that narrowly beats her three of a kind, forcing her to escalate the stakes. The atmosphere grows tense as the dealer distributes the next hand, and for the first time, the boy's luck seems to falter, leaving him with nothing of value. His opponent, sensing a shift in the tide, prepares to reveal her own hand with a predatory grin. Behind her, the manager leans in to whisper that this is the perfect opening, reminding her to keep their illicit advantages hidden from the hero's sight. She stares at her cards, wondering if the boy's incredible luck has finally reached its limit. With a triumphant flourish, she reveals a royal straight flush, claiming every last one of the boy's chips and declaring herself the winner. As the hero collapses to the floor in apparent defeat, she commands him to succumb to the despair she has so carefully orchestrated. Yet, as she looks down at her fallen foe, he looks back up at her with a serene, unexpected smile that catches her completely off guard. He is met with utter confusion as his opponent demands to know why he is smiling despite having lost everything. He begins to explain his reasoning, his voice calm and steady as he prepares to reveal the truth behind his reaction. He beams with a pure, infectious joy, declaring that the loss doesn't matter because he was simply happy to face her seriously in a match. This genuine admission catches her off guard, causing a faint blush to creep across her face as she processes the fact that her attempt to break him has backfired completely. She turns away with a huff, attempting to regain her composure by warning him not to underestimate her, claiming she hadn't even used her full strength. He, undeterred and still full of energy, chirps back a cheerful confirmation of her power, seemingly oblivious to her frustration. She finds herself gritting her teeth in frustration, her face flushed as she realizes the irony of the situation. Instead of plunging him into despair, she has only succeeded in making him happy. In the distance, he waves goodbye, already looking forward to their next encounter, leaving her to grapple with the failure of her latest scheme. Later, she is presented with a bill for the hero's losses by her manager within the dark spires of her castle. She stares at the paper, her eyes widening in shock and outrage as she discovers that the costs incurred are actually greater than the winnings she cheated him out of. The demon lord, now in the guise of a small, innocent girl named Abby, approaches the young hero with a plea for help, claiming to be lost. Behind her facade, she revels in the success of her perfect disguise, certain that the boy has no inkling of her true identity or the malice hidden beneath her youthful exterior. She recalls the meticulous details of her scheme, using magic to regress her physical form to lower his guard, creating the perfect opening to strike him down. It is a calculated gamble, designed to exploit the hero's inherent kindness and finish him off before he can become a true threat. As they walk through the woods, she watches him closely, waiting for the precise moment to act. He leads the way, cautioning her to watch her step, unaware that his companion is mentally preparing to end his journey right then and there. Suddenly, a stumble breaks the rhythm of their march, and he quickly reaches out to ensure she is unharmed. His genuine concern catches her off guard, causing a flicker of hesitation as she looks into his wide, honest eyes, her predatory instincts momentarily clouded by his warmth. He offers his hand, suggesting they walk together for safety, which sends a strange, sudden thrum through her chest. She stares at his outstretched palm, confused by the physical reaction her small, borrowed body is having to his simple gesture of protection. Their fingers interlace, and she is struck by how large and warm his hand feels compared to her own. She struggles to reconcile her role as a conqueror with the flustered sensation rising within her, wondering if the child's body is influencing her mind more than she anticipated. Realizing the intimacy is a hindrance, she tells herself that she must break the connection to regain her focus. The mission requires her hands to be free to strike, yet the simple act of letting go feels unexpectedly difficult as she stares at their joined hands. She eventually speaks up, urging him to release her so he can be ready to draw his sword if danger appears. It is a logical argument, a desperate attempt to re-establish the distance between a predator and her prey before her resolve softens further. He beams with confidence, asserting that his rigorous daily training has prepared him to fight even with one hand occupied. His unwavering optimism is an unforeseen obstacle, leaving her frustrated as her tactical excuses crumble against his earnestness and dedication to his craft. The thought of failure stings, as she imagines the mockery she would face from her own master if she were bested by such a simple display of resolve. She remains trapped in the hero's grip, her grand plan stalled by a warmth she cannot quite push away, fearing the judgment of those she left behind. She listens as the boy leads her through the meadow, his voice filled with admiration for the one who trains him. He describes his mentor as strong, kind, and incredibly cool, his enthusiasm radiating with every step they take together. His words carry a weight of genuine devotion that she finds difficult to process, causing a faint blush to creep across her cheeks as she looks at him in quiet contemplation. She is struck by his vibrant, carefree laugh as he declares his ultimate ambition, to grow as powerful as his master and eventually defeat the evil demon lord. He remains blissfully unaware that the very target of his righteous quest is standing right beside him, her expression softening into a complex mix of sadness and guilt as they reach the edge of the woods. He reluctantly lets go of her hand as they arrive at the exit, turning back to call out a final question. He asks if their paths will ever cross again, his youthful face filled with a hopeful curiosity that lingers in the air between them. He sees her pause for a moment, looking back over her shoulder with a gaze that is both heavy and unreadable, the boy's innocent resolve having left a mark on her soul. A legendary blade, the hero's sword, stands embedded in a massive stone, delivered unexpectedly by Lady Noelle. Yu stares at the weapon in awe, while his companion questions the sudden arrival of such a significant artifact. Reading the accompanying letter, she learns that this is the next trial, drawing the sword from its stone pedestal. The message promises that success will grant the boy even greater power than he currently possesses. She is filled with a sudden, sharp dread upon this revelation. As the Demon Lord, she recognizes that a powered-up hero would be an existential threat to her kind, and she resolves to prevent him from claiming the weapon at any cost. He, however, is already brimming with excitement, his eyes sparkling at the prospect of becoming stronger. He reaches for the hilt, prompting her to shout a desperate warning for him to stop. Thinking quickly, she insists on inspecting the trial herself first. Her true motive remains hidden. She must keep the boy away from the sword to ensure the safety of the demon race. She approaches the blade with a dark determination. Her plan is simple and ruthless. The very moment the sword is loosened from the rock, she will shatter it before it can ever fall into his hands. As her fingers close around the hilt, a surge of holy energy shocks her system. She grinds her teeth against the power of the hero's sword, her mind racing with the need to eliminate this threat before the boy can grow any more formidable. She is caught off guard as the pedestal suddenly erupts in a violent discharge of energy. Instead of destroying the blade, she instinctively throws herself in front of the boy, shielding him from the blast and screaming for him to stay back. The dust settles, leaving her trembling with a confusing realization. She stares at her hands, stunned by the fact that her first instinct was to protect the very person she intended to thwart. She quickly tries to rationalize the impulse, telling herself that her only goal was to prevent him from completing the trial. Despite her internal protests, the boy watches her with a silent, questioning gaze. She desperately clings to him, her voice sharp with panic as she commands him to release the blade, warning that the power is far beyond his capacity. Despite this searing energy, the young hero remains resolute. He acknowledges his own limitations but feels the weight of his title, believing that a hero must face such trials regardless of the outcome. He looks back at her with a radiant, trusting smile, his heart filled with a new conviction. He realizes that while he might fail alone, their combined strength could be enough to overcome the impossible. This sudden display of pure faith leaves the Demon Lord stunned, a faint blush creeping onto her cheeks as she feels the sincerity of his words. He watches as the legendary blade shatters with a sudden, sharp crack, leaving him holding nothing but a useless hilt. Rather than being discouraged by the failure of the trial, he beams with joy, expressing how much it meant to him to simply work alongside her. Watching his infectious happiness, she finds herself begrudgingly satisfied. Since the weapon is destroyed and no longer a threat, she considers the outcome a personal victory. The Demon Lord stands in the forest, her eyes widening in genuine surprise as she learns that today marks the anniversary of the young hero's birth. She looks down at the boy, pondering her responsibility. As his self-appointed master, a celebration seems appropriate, even if it simply signifies the passage of another year. She finds herself in a state of frantic denial moments later, questioning the absurdity of a dark sovereign honoring the life of her sworn enemy. She eventually settles on a cold, tactical justification. Fostering this master-disciple bond is merely a ruse to lower his guard before his inevitable defeat later that day. She is suddenly interrupted when the boy innocently inquires about her own birthday traditions, wondering if she spends the day training as he does. He listens as she paints a vivid picture of her realm's festivities, where a boisterous crowd indulges in endless drinking and song amidst a mountain of tribute offered by her loyal subjects. She acknowledges that many attendees are simply looking for any excuse to revel, yet the boy finds the idea of such a grand gathering quite appealing. He watches as she reflects further, admitting that despite the opulence, the most meaningful gift she ever received was a simple gesture from her predecessor. She notices a wistful smile on his face as he confesses a touch of envy, noting that he has never experienced such a public display of affection or recognition. He suddenly brightens with a new resolve, declaring his intent to celebrate her birthday next time, leaving her speechless at his selfless desire to honor her. She finds herself caught in a web of conflicting emotions, clenching her fist as she realizes that even on his own birthday, the boy is focused entirely on her. She tries to steel her resolve, reminding herself that he is the detestable hero and she cannot allow herself to celebrate him. She desperately convinces herself that this entire master-disciple charade is merely a calculated strategy to lower his guard, a necessary step toward his eventual defeat. She is snapped out of her internal monologue when he looks up with wide, expectant eyes, wondering if there might be a birthday present in store for him. Caught off guard, she stammers a hesitant confirmation, prompting him to make a simple, heartfelt request. He asks if they can share another nap together. Despite her earlier resolve, she finds herself agreeing with a soft chuckle, her cheeks flushing as they settle into the bed. He drifts toward sleep with a radiant smile, expressing his sincere gratitude to his master for the kindness. As she watches his peaceful face, she maintains the facade of the cold tactician, telling herself that everything is unfolding exactly as she intended. He sleeps soundly, unaware of the growing doubt in her mind as she lies beside him in the quiet room. She stares blankly ahead, the silence forcing her to question if this domestic scene truly aligns with her grand design for his downfall, or if she is simply lying to herself. The Demon Lord stands tall, declaring her intent to defeat the hero, but her confidence wavers when she spots the young boy. Yu stands before her, fully geared with a massive pack and a bedroll, looking determined. She questions where he could possibly be going with such heavy luggage. He looks up at her, his expression solemn as he addresses her as master. With a heavy heart, he delivers the news that their paths must diverge here, leaving her completely blindsided and stammering in disbelief. To explain his sudden departure, he reveals a letter he received from Lady Noelle. He announces his intention to embark on a journey, a decision made so abruptly that he hadn't even found the words to tell her until now. The boy elaborates on his mission, citing reports of a demon lord appearing in the western lands. Believing it is his sacred duty as a hero to vanquish this evil, he has resolved to set out immediately to defeat this supposed threat. Beside him, the woman he knows as his master stands frozen, her mind racing as she processes the absurdity of his claim. She is gripped by a sudden, frantic panic, her face contorting in a comical display of shock. Internally, she screams the truth that she is the very demon lord he seeks to destroy, unable to fathom how such a misunderstanding could have occurred. Her thoughts spiral as she considers the possibilities, wondering if Lady Noelle is intentionally spreading lies or if a genuine imposter has surfaced to claim her title. She finds it hard to believe that the great sage would resort to such deception, yet the confusion only deepens as she tries to make sense of the situation. Meanwhile, the young hero continues his explanation, his gaze softening with concern. He admits that he didn't want to drag his master into the perils of a hero's duty, thinking that a quiet departure would spare them both the pain of a long goodbye. The mere suggestion of a permanent separation triggers an explosive reaction from her. She lets out a desperate, guttural cry of "No." Her face a mask of raw emotion that leaves the boy reeling back in total confusion. As the echoes of her shout fade into the quiet landscape, she feels a strange, sharp tightening in her chest. She is mortified by her own outburst, wondering what has come over her to make her lose her composure so completely. Desperate to maintain her dignity, she quickly fabricates a reason to stop him, pointing an accusing finger and claiming he is far too inexperienced for such a task. She insists that setting out on a journey now is 10 years premature, her face flushed as she struggles to find any excuse to keep him by her side. She watches in disbelief as he stands his ground, his eyes burning with a newfound defiance. He declares his intention to leave regardless of her protests, asserting his identity as a hero. Even if it means defying the very person who trained him, he refuses to back down from his chosen path. He is met with a sudden shift in her demeanor as she towers over him, demanding that he prove his resolve in combat. Despite her skepticism regarding his experience, he insists that his rigorous training has prepared him for the trials ahead. He listens as she proposes a final, daunting condition. A single successful strike against her will earn him the right to depart. The gravity of the challenge leaves him momentarily speechless, his mind racing to find a way past her formidable defenses. He accepts the challenge with a fierce cry, drawing his blade as he vows to make her acknowledge his strength. Watching him, she sees a level of seriousness in his eyes that she can no longer ignore, realizing that his determination is absolute. She lunges forward with explosive power, her movements a blur as she strikes to end the duel instantly. In her heart, she remains desperate to keep him from the dangers of the world, even if it means defeating him here. The tension in the air was thick as the demon lord confronted the young boy. She questioned his hesitation, reminding him of the rumors of another demon lord rising in the west and his duty to strike her down. Despite the weight of his destiny, she declared with a sharp click of her tongue that she would not let her hero go so easily. To prepare him, she pushed him through rigorous training, her voice cutting through the sounds of their sparring. She corrected his stance, demanding more strength from his hips and precision in his movements, while he struggled to keep up with the relentless pace she set. As the session continued, she watched him with a growing sense of realization. He had truly mastered everything she had taught him, a fact that brought her a complicated sense of pride, even as she reminded herself that he was destined to be her greatest enemy. Suddenly, the boy unleashed a surge of radiant energy, his small frame vibrating with the sheer force of the hero's power. The intensity of the light caught her off guard, forcing a gasp of surprise as the raw potential she had nurtured finally began to bloom. The force of the blast sent her reeling backward across the cracked earth. She cursed her own negligence, stunned that he had gained such a high level of control over his abilities in such a short span of time. Nearby, the watchful eyes of Lady Noelle narrowed as she observed the display. She had always known that monitoring the hero's progress was vital to preventing a situation exactly like this, where his strength might eclipse their own. Deep down, the demon lord wrestled with a burgeoning conflict that threatened her resolve. She lectured herself on her duty to defeat the hero, yet she couldn't deny the attachment she had formed, realizing with a heavy heart that she had never truly intended to kill him. He lunged forward again, his movements now fluid and decisive, a stark contrast to his earlier hesitation. She barely managed to defend against the onslaught, acknowledging that this was his true strength and that her own lingering doubts were the only thing holding her back. Standing tall amidst the settling dust, she finally lowered her guard and looked down at the boy. With a solemn tone, she admitted her complete defeat and declared that their paths must now diverge, acknowledging his readiness to depart. Overwhelmed by the weight of the moment, he bowed his head, tears streaming down his face as he struggled to find the words. He managed a choked thank you, calling her his master one last time as the reality of their parting finally set in. He breaks down completely, tears streaming down his face in a messy display of grief. The young hero wails, pleading with his master not to leave him behind, crying out that he doesn't want to part with her. Despite his title and his efforts to remain stoic for the sake of being a hero, the thought of their separation is too much to bear, and he confesses his desperate wish to remain by her side. Seeing his distress, the demon lord sighs, a faint blush coloring her cheeks as she looks down at the sobbing boy. She calls him utterly hopeless, but her tone softens as she makes a sudden, life-changing declaration. She will join him on his journey. She stands tall before him, her silhouette imposing against the horizon as he looks up from the ground in disbelief. Proclaiming that as his master, she cannot simply abandon such an inexperienced and emotional crybaby disciple. She vows to restart his training from the very beginning, ensuring he is never truly alone. Overwhelmed with relief, the boy cries out to her, his eyes shining with newfound hope. She turns her head away, trying to hide her own embarrassment, and justifies her decision by claiming it is the only way she can continue to keep a watchful eye on his progress. Without a second thought, he lunges forward and throws his arms around her in a tight, grateful embrace. The demon lord is caught off guard, her eyes widening in surprise as she stiffens, clearly unprepared for such a raw display of affection from her student. Far from the emotional reunion, Lady Noelle watches the pair through the swirling mists of a crystal ball. A knowing smile plays on her lips as she contemplates how this unlikely duo will fare against the rising threat of the new demon lord, promising to observe their progress until the very end. They arrive at the bustling port town, the air thick with the scent of salt and trade. The young boy gazes in wonder at the rows of shops, while his companion, the hidden demon lord, acknowledges that their journey together has truly begun. He eagerly agrees to her suggestion, ready to gather supplies for their trek westward to confront the one they believe to be the demon lord. She, however, is preoccupied with the efficacy of her magical disguise, having woven an enchantment to ensure the townspeople remain oblivious to her true nature. Her internal mission remains clear: gather intelligence on this pretender while maintaining a close watch on the boy. The boy's eyes widen with genuine awe as he witnesses her store a bulky backpack into a tiny pouch using spatial magic. She feels a momentary pang of relief, realizing he is impressed by the feat rather than suspicious of its origin. As they pass a particular storefront, she feels a surge of tactical concern, fearing that any new equipment the boy acquires will only serve to increase his strength. She resolves to sabotage the shopping trip by any means necessary. Her plan takes an unexpected turn when he suggests they both find new attire, leading her into a changing room. Clad in a revealing, dark leotard, she steels her resolve, telling herself this humiliation is a necessary sacrifice to ensure the hero's eventual downfall. The process proves far more taxing than she anticipated, as she cycles through various outfits under his enthusiastic supervision. While she finds the ordeal exhausting, the boy seems to be enjoying the spectacle of the fashion show. Standing before a mirror, she adjusts a sophisticated, dark gown that fits her form perfectly. Despite her disdain for human craftsmanship, she is forced to admit that the tailoring is remarkably precise and flattering. He stands frozen, his mouth agape as he takes in her transformed appearance. She, meanwhile, is overcome with a wave of self-consciousness, worrying that such a frivolous display is beneath the dignity of a true ruler of the demon realm. The boy's face lights up with pure, unfiltered admiration as he declares that she looks like a beautiful princess. The unexpected sincerity of his praise leaves her momentarily speechless, her regal composure faltering under his bright gaze. He continues to press his point, even as his companion protests vehemently against the suggested attire. She insists that the frilly garments are entirely unsuitable for combat and far from her personal aesthetic, arguing that a ruler of her stature would never be seen in such flashy clothes. However, he remains undeterred, countering that the choice has nothing to do with practical armor or established style, but something more personal. Driven by a sudden burst of earnestness, the young boy takes her hands in his face flushing a deep crimson as he confesses his simple desire to give her a gift. The unexpected gesture leaves her stunned and breathless, her own composure crumbling under his sincere gaze. Yet, the moment of sentimentality is abruptly shattered when the shopkeeper announces a staggering price of 80,000 gold pieces, a sum far beyond their meager means, leaving them both reeling from the shop. Because of the exorbitant cost, they are forced to leave the shop empty-handed, much to the secret relief of the Demon Queen. While she outwardly accepts his apologies for the failed purchase, she inwardly celebrates the narrow escape, glad that her dignity remains intact and that she won't be forced to wear the embarrassing outfit. Since they couldn't afford his equipment either, the status quo is maintained as they continue their walk through the town, though the boy remains dejected. Unbeknownst to the pair as they wander the streets, a dark presence watches them from the shadows of a distant location. A hooded figure, identifying himself as the Demon Lord Abyss, peers into a glowing crystal ball that reflects their every move. He watches their light-hearted interactions with a chilling amusement, whispering a dark warning that they should savor these fleeting moments of peace while they still can. A new power has risen in the West, casting a shadow over the continent. To uncover the truth behind this mysterious rival, the Demon Lord Abyss and the young hero Yu have boarded a vessel, setting sail toward an uncertain destination. As their ship cuts through the white-capped waves, the boy's excitement is boundless, his voice ringing out across the deck as he celebrates his very first journey upon the open sea. While he marvels at the horizon, she is suddenly gripped by a paralyzing realization, clutching her head in distress as the terrifying fact that she cannot swim finally sinks in. She resolves to maintain her composure at all costs, fearing that if her secret were revealed, her dignity as a demon lord would be shattered and she would become a laughingstock to all. She attempts to soothe her frayed nerves by noting the ship's massive size, but her internal reassurance is cut short by a sudden, violent tremor from the depths below. The crew erupts into a frantic scramble for safety as a colossal sea monster emerges, its massive form dwarfing the vessel and threatening to drag them all into the abyss. Amidst the chaos, the boy calls out to his master, who watches with gritted teeth as the reality of their situation becomes increasingly dire. Stepping forward to confront the beast, she attempts to exert her royal dominance, commanding the creature to depart and obey the will of a true demon lord. The creature merely scoffs at her demand, mocking her authority and declaring that its only true king is the legendary demon lord of the West. Stunned by the confirmation that her rival truly exists, she is suddenly ensnared by a powerful tentacle, prompting the boy to draw his blade and charge forward in a desperate rescue attempt. He is suddenly eclipsed by a surge of raw fury as his companion erupts in a desperate counterattack. Screaming in rage at the beast for what it has done to the boy, she delivers a devastating blow that sends the creature reeling back into the depths. She sinks beneath the churning surface, her strength failing as the cold water claims her. In the silence of the deep, a crushing sense of shame washes over her. She laments her inability to defeat even a simple sea monster, feeling utterly disgraced by her own weakness and the fear that paralyzed her. Her thoughts drift to the legacy she carries, questioning if she is truly fit to hold her title. She remembers the previous ruler, a figure of immense grace who commanded the love and respect of all monsters, a stark contrast to her own perceived failures and the pathetic sight she must have made while drowning. She gasps for air as she regains consciousness on the wooden deck of the ship, the bright sky a jarring contrast to the dark depths. Looking up, she sees the young boy watching over her with concern and asks softly if it was he who pulled her from the watery grave. She sits up slowly, her movements heavy with a lingering sense of defeat. As she looks at him, she confesses the sheer desperation she felt when she saw him in danger, her voice trembling with the weight of her own perceived inadequacy. Her gaze falls to the deck as she voices her deepest fear, that her subordinates will eventually abandon her. She believes that a master who drowns so pathetically loses all dignity, leaving her certain that no one could possibly follow such a weak leader. She is suddenly interrupted by a burst of infectious optimism as the boy's face lights up with a determined smile. He insists that there is no reason for her to feel down, confidently declaring that with a little practice, she will be able to master the waves and swim in no time. He beams at her, promising to stay by her side and teach her everything she needs to know, his unwavering loyalty bringing a flicker of hope to her eyes. However, the moment of connection is shadowed by a distant observer. The demon lord of the West watches from the darkness, noting with cold satisfaction that everything is proceeding exactly as planned. Abyss relaxes in the steaming waters of an open-air bath found during their travels. Though the temperature is slightly high, she finds the soak refreshing. Her mind drifts to the political landscape. They are currently within the Western Demon Lord's territory, a place where her own influence as a ruler carries no weight. She steels her resolve, reminding herself that fulfilling her duties is the only way to ensure the monster's loyalty. Despite the pressure, she refuses to let her confidence waver. They arrive at a bustling festival, the air thick with the scent of street food and the sound of celebration. The young boy is full of energy, shouting with excitement about the festivities as he leads the way. His companion, the demon lord, stands tall beside him, taking in the lively atmosphere of the crowded marketplace with a watchful eye. As they walk, she ponders the strange customs of humans, surprised that even here, within the Western Demon Lord's domain, such celebrations persist. She narrows her eyes, realizing that the chaotic crowd provides the perfect cover to finally eliminate the young hero without drawing unwanted attention. Suddenly, the sheer volume of people becomes a physical barrier, and he is swept away by the current of the crowd. She reaches out in a panic, struggling against the sea of humanity as her eyes widen with shock, realizing how easily they could be separated in this overwhelming swarm. Despite the near separation, he remains oblivious to her internal turmoil, his face lit up with joy as he comments on how much fun unfamiliar festivals can be. She, however, is visibly agitated, gritting her teeth and wondering if the boy has completely lost his senses to the novelty of the event. She quickly closes the distance, grabbing him firmly to ensure he doesn't wander off again. She commands him to stay close, her mind racing with the fear that if he disappears into the crowd, her chance to fulfill her dark mission will vanish with him. He suddenly stops, his eyes widening as he spots something interesting among the stalls. He calls out to her, pulling her attention toward a small shop tucked away from the main path, his curiosity piqued by the items on display. They approach a display case filled with simple, glittering trinkets, where an elderly merchant greets them warmly. The boy's gaze is fixed on a collection of colorful toy rings, his interest clearly captured by the modest jewelry. He listens intently as the merchant explains the local lore, noting that it is tradition to gift a ring to a loved one during the festival to ensure their happiness. His master looks on with a skeptical expression, though the sentiment of the human custom clearly registers with her. He decides to make a purchase, but as he reaches for his payment, a look of pure dread washes over his face. His wallet is missing, lost somewhere in the chaos of the festival, leaving them both stunned at the sudden turn of luck. He stands there, tears streaming down his face as the weight of his lost wallet sinks in. Abyss looks down at him, suggesting the crowd must have swallowed it up, while the elderly shopkeeper watches with a warm smile, finding the boy's status as a hero quite admirable despite his current distress. Seeing the boy's plight, the merchant holds up a simple, elegant ring, offering it as a gesture of goodwill and telling him he can simply settle the debt another time. His eyes light up with pure joy as he accepts the gift, bowing deeply in gratitude. The old man chuckles, telling him not to worry about it, and to just focus on his duty to defeat the demon lord, though he adds with a wink that he's only half serious. As they walk away, he gazes at the ring, touched by the unexpected kindness of the people in this town who treat a hero with such warmth. Abyss watches him from a few steps behind, noting his change in mood with a silent, knowing expression. She finds herself caught in a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts, remembering how the people of his own village had once cast him out. Though she reminds herself of her duties as the Demon Lord, she struggles to suppress a growing sense of sympathy for the boy who has endured so much. Suddenly, he turns toward her with a bright, determined smile, thrusting the ring forward and loudly pleading for her to accept it. The suddenness of the gesture leaves her completely stunned, her eyes wide with disbelief. He beams at her, explaining that the ring is a charm meant for someone truly special, and he wants her to have it so that his beloved master can always be happy. The sincerity in his voice causes a deep flush to creep across her face, her usual composure crumbling. With gentle hands, he slides the ring onto her finger, leaving her heart racing and her mind in a state of total confusion as she wonders why she is so shaken by such a simple act. Meanwhile, from the dark recesses of a nearby alley, a sinister silhouette watches the exchange with murderous intent, whispering a vow to end the young hero's life. Abyss is overwhelmed by a strange sensation in her chest, her heart pounding as she watches the young hero. She struggles to reconcile her duty as the Demon Lord to defeat him with these confusing, racing emotions. Suddenly, a familiar voice rings out, calling her Princess Sis. She turns in shock to see a young dragonkin boy standing there with a confident, toothy grin, finally having tracked her down. He is revealed to be Doran, the first prince of the dragon royal family, a formidable figure whose presence is underscored by the spectral image of a great dragon looming behind his silhouette. Without hesitation, the prince lunges toward the hero, shouting for him to get away from his sister and branding him a filthy intruder. He quickly seizes the boy, while the hero, confused by the sudden assault, asks his companion if she knows this newcomer. She can only watch in mounting panic, realizing the situation is spiraling out of control. She demands to know the meaning of his sudden appearance, but he merely offers a casual greeting, noting how long it has been since they last met. The prince explains that he has come to rescue her, reminding her that she was supposed to be awaiting orders. He then declares with absolute certainty that his actions are only natural, given that he is her fiancé. She immediately protests, insisting that his claim is based on a massive misunderstanding from their childhood, though he remains steadfast, clinging to a promise he believes was made years ago. To manage the growing tension, she quickly fabricates a story, claiming that her proximity to the hero is merely a calculated plan to lower his guard before delivering a final defeat, a lie that the others present seem to find somewhat plausible. She watches as the young dragon prince narrows his eyes, his skepticism palpable. He questions the validity of her supposed plan, his gaze piercing through her facade. He continues his interrogation, noting that she has had countless opportunities to strike the hero down, yet each time she has failed. To him, these failures seem calculated rather than accidental. She stammeringly attempts to protest, but her defense is weak against his blunt observations. The boy's accusations take a sharper turn as he points directly at the ring adorning her hand. He demands to know why, if she truly intends to kill the hero, she is wearing such a token. The question catches her off guard, leaving her momentarily speechless. His eyes narrow further as a dark realization seems to take hold. He begins to piece together a conclusion that she desperately hopes he won't reach. With a sudden, explosive outburst, he accuses her of being charmed by the very hero she is supposed to destroy. The sheer absurdity of the claim, combined with its proximity to the truth, sends her into a flustered panic. He quickly talks himself into this new theory, deciding that there is no other explanation for her behavior. He believes she has gone soft, unable to bring herself to harm the boy. She can only stare in bewilderment as he constructs this elaborate narrative. Driven by a newfound sense of duty, the young prince vows to save her from this perceived enchantment. Before she can stop him, he turns and bolts toward the town, his mind set on a singular goal. She stands frozen, watching him disappear. A heavy silence falls as she realizes she couldn't find a single word to refute his claims, her own complicated feelings leaving her paralyzed. Her thoughts drift to the young hero's innocent smile, a stark contrast to the grim duty she carries as the Demon Lord. The weight of her title and the necessity of her mission press down on her once more. Back in the village, the Dragon Prince finally confronts his target. He points a finger accusingly at the confused boy, declaring with fierce intensity that he will kill the hero for the sake of his Princess Sis. The young Dragon Prince, Doran, stands defiantly, pointing his blade at the boy hero. He demands the release of his sister, accusing the boy of holding her captive. Confused by the sudden hostility, the young hero barely has time to react before the prince lunges forward with a swift, aggressive strike. He continues his relentless assault, their blades clashing in a flurry of sparks. Watching from the sidelines, the Demon Lord Abyss bristles with irritation, noting that the prince is acting entirely on his own whims without regard for the larger situation. She remains stationary, her mind racing as she analyzes the unfolding duel. To her, the prince's outburst seems calculated, yet she knows that any interference on her part would only draw unwanted suspicion. Despite her internal conflict, she reminds herself of her station. As the Demon Lord, her primary duty is the defeat of the hero, and for now, she believes she must simply observe. The battle intensifies as the prince unleashes a devastating technique, conjuring a massive, swirling vortex of fire known as the Flame Army Great Fire Wheel. The young hero is momentarily overwhelmed by the sheer heat and force of the magical conflagration, struggling to find a way through the inferno. Seeing the boy in genuine peril, she clenches her fist, her resolve hardening. The calculated distance she tried to maintain vanishes in an instant as her instincts take over. She suddenly surges forward, her dark power manifesting as ethereal chains that cut through the flames. With a decisive movement, she shields the boy from the brunt of the fire, pulling him close as the magical heat dissipates against her aura. She meets his stunned gaze with an intense, unreadable expression while the dragon prince recoils in disbelief. The prince's voice trembles as he addresses her, his confusion evident as he tries to reconcile her protective actions with her role as his royal sister. She stands tall, her presence commanding and cold as she looms over the protected hero. With a sharp, unwavering gaze, she warns the prince to stay back, declaring that the boy is her prey alone and that no one else is permitted to interfere with her hunt. The prince remains unconvinced, his frustration boiling over as he accuses her of being distracted or even charmed by their supposed enemy. She offers no rebuttal, her silence only deepening the tension as she maintains her protective stance over the young hero. She watches as the young hero's eyes light up with pure, unadulterated admiration. He exclaims that the finishing move he just witnessed was incredibly cool, his face practically glowing with excitement. He rushes toward the young dragon prince, completely ignoring the previous hostility. He eagerly asks to be taught how to perform such a feat, noting that since they are about the same age, it was truly amazing to see. The sudden shift leaves the prince stunned and speechless. The boy extends a hand of fellowship, his smile wide and sincere as he proposes they become friends. The prince's heart races, his face flushing a deep crimson as he struggles to process this alien sensation of warmth. Watching from the side, the demon lord begins to wonder if this is the legendary, irresistible charm often attributed to heroes. He recoils, his pride clashing with his newfound confusion, and blusters that it isn't as if he would completely rule out the possibility of friendship. Declaring that he will let the hero off for today out of respect for his sister, he beats a hasty retreat. Left behind, the demon lord can only massage her temples, already feeling the onset of a massive headache from the day's absurd turn of events. Abyss and you arrive at the entrance of a secluded settlement, only to be met with immediate resistance. A tall, muscular woman blocks their path, sternly declaring that this sacred land is strictly off-limits to men. Abyss realizes they must find the fortune teller mentioned in Noel's letter to learn about the revived demon lord, but the local customs present an immediate and formidable obstacle to their progress. The young boy, undeterred by the guardian's stern greeting, steps forward with sparkling eyes and a wide grin. He boldly proclaims his status as a hero and pleads for information regarding the evil demon lord he is destined to defeat, leaving the surrounding village women in a state of utter disbelief at his sudden outburst. Their shock quickly turns to awe as they recall an ancient prophecy. They whisper excitedly among themselves that a real hero has finally arrived, just as Lady Barbara had predicted, while Abyss watches the exchange with a mix of suspicion and growing weariness at the turn of events. Seeing an opportunity to fulfill the prophecy, one of the women offers to guide them, but only under a specific and humiliating condition. Since men are strictly forbidden from entering the village, she insists that the young hero must don the village's traditional female attire and pass himself off as a girl, a prospect that leaves Abyss reeling in shock and the boy looking utterly confused. She reluctantly encourages her companion to commit to the ruse for the sake of their mission, telling him to do his best. While the boy promises to give it his all, Abyss stares at the skimpy, formal attire being offered, her mind reeling at the sheer absurdity of the situation they have found themselves in. He, however, takes the challenge with unexpected and fiery fervor. With a determined shout, he declares that no hardship is too great for a hero to overcome, though his intense enthusiasm makes Abyss worry that he has flipped a mental switch in a very strange and unpredictable direction. As they prepare to enter the village, she finds herself paralyzed by a moment of deep indecision. The need for clues about the demon lord of the West is pressing, yet she questions the wisdom of allowing her young charge to participate in such a ridiculous charade within this bizarre settlement. She eventually steals her resolve, her knuckles whitening as she clenches her fist in frustration. She reminds herself that this indignity is a necessary step to gather intelligence and, ultimately, to find a way to defeat the hero himself once their temporary alliance reaches its end. The transformation is soon complete, and the boy emerges wearing the revealing traditional garments and a matching headscarf. As the village women marvel at how well the outfit actually suits him, Abyss finds herself blushing furiously, her internal monologue a chaotic mess of confusion and a very reluctant sense of admiration. He stands amidst a group of admiring women, his new feminine attire drawing a chorus of approval. They chime in with praise, noting how well the outfit suits him and how cute he looks. Nearby, his master attempts to maintain her composure, reminding herself that as his superior, she must handle this situation with calm authority. The boy's face flushes a deep crimson as the scrutiny continues, his eyes darting away in sheer embarrassment. He finds the collective gaze of the villagers overwhelming, yet his shy reaction only fuels their excitement. They find his bashfulness irresistible, while his master's patience begins to wear thin as she watches the scene unfold. Unable to contain herself any longer, she lunges forward and snatches him away from the crowd. With a fierce, protective growl, she warns the women not to treat him like a mere plaything. To her, he is more than just a companion. He is her designated prey, and she will not tolerate others overstepping their bounds. Amidst the commotion, a woman named Barbara steps forward, identifying herself as the village's fortune teller. She offers a light-hearted apology for the villagers' behavior, explaining that it has been quite some time since they have seen a young boy in their secluded home. Her presence brings a momentary lull to the chaotic energy of the encounter. Following the encounter, the pair sets out once more, the fortune teller's parting words echoing in their minds. She had provided a clear direction, instructing them to head straight to the west if they wished to find the demon lord. Though the specific details regarding their target remain shrouded in mystery, they now have a definitive path forward. As they walk, he reflects on the brief masquerade, admitting with a small smile that wearing clothes similar to hers was actually quite enjoyable. This innocent comment sends a fresh wave of heat to her cheeks, leaving her flustered and unable to find a proper retort as she processes his words. She remains silent, her mind racing with a strange, new sensation that she struggles to define. While the boy looks on with a confused expression, unaware of the impact of his words, it feels as though a previously locked door within her heart has been nudged open, changing the dynamic of their journey.